Hello, welcome to the THC show. This is the show where we try to find the unfortunate truths about the free society that we're supposed to be living in, and some hope about what we can do to change those things, because we all know it is pretty bad, and some mechanisms for doing that. On the show today, we have 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca, as always, for the 420 session. Jerry Martin will join us for the Martin Medical Moment, and my guest today is on the board of the BC Libertarian Party, Kyle McCormick, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the party's take and his take about what the role of government should be in a so-called free country, and what freedom actually means, and how we can continue to strive for that in meaningful ways. It's going to take us a very long time to get over the damage that's been caused by prohibition. The attempt to prohibit substances, going back to the prohibition of alcohol back in the day, but all the way through, and more than that too. But the attempts to prohibit substances is a disaster for the people who these laws are supposed to be trying to protect. In fact, it's very clear at this point in history that prohibition is never really about trying to protect people from dangerous substances. It's always about trying to protect monopolies and people that are providing substitute or replacement products for those things that are being prohibited. It's always very political, and it's never very profitable for the society in general. Prohibition increases the demand of whatever it is that's attempting to be prohibited, and it causes a guaranteed underground marketplace that gets more and more violent the more you try to arrest your way out of it or enforce it out of existence. People will get what it is that's prohibited no matter what it takes, and there's no army that's going to match the army of the side that's trying to provide those things no matter what, as is witnessed in Mexico, where the cartels are richer and better armed than the government agents and armies that are there. You just can't do it. It doesn't work, and there's a real good reason for that, because one of the biggest casualties of prohibition, or the attempt to prohibit substances, is our sense of freedom, or our lack thereof as a result. Freedom is a core need. It's like air and water and love. It's so core that if we sense as human beings that there's a lack of freedom, that we're not free in a particular area, then that becomes our focus, and that drives our behaviors, and that we become obsessed with that, because freedom is so important. And like I say, it's one of those very core needs that we have. I mean, you can see it demonstrated in very young people, kids going through the terrible twos, for example. We all know that the kids are going to do whatever it is you tell them not to do, and they're going to try to do the opposite of what you tell them to do, because that's kind of their role in life. But the reason that's their role in life is because they're driven to be free, to be able to make their own choices, to be able to not have those pressures and stressors that are on people as a result of a lack of freedom. And so 2-year-olds are super rebellious, while teenagers are even way worse. Teenagers, that's kind of what they're famous for. Just like politicians are famous for lying, well, teenagers are famous for rebelling. And it seems to be their goal in life to find out wherever those limits are and break them and get to the other side of them and find the freedom that's there. And, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but adults typically are way worse than teenagers. That when adults think that they're being oppressed and that there's somebody taking away their freedom, they get pretty concerned about it as well, and go to great lengths to maintain and get back that freedom. And we're supposed to have a free country here. It's been fought for in a lot of different ways for a very long time, and we lose sight of these histories as history becomes farther and farther in the past, and we don't understand the struggles that got us to where we are here, and where it is that we are, and where it is that we should be going, and how we should be getting there. We tend to lose sight of those things, and freedom is such a basic, core, important need. And it's talked about a lot by our politicians. I mean, they bandy about, this is a free country, this and blah, blah, blah. But yet at the same time, they come up with, well, yeah, but the law is the law. I heard Trudeau say that recently, that the law is the law and it just must be upheld. Well, the law is in many cases an ass. And when the law is an ass, it best not be upheld. And in fact, it's a person and a citizen's duty to break bad laws, to stand in the face of bad laws. And you should not comply and you should not compromise on the ideals of actual freedom. Don't let them threaten you with taking a mile of your freedom and then you compromise that they can have a quarter mile and you feel good with that. It's not okay. Never do that. We've got this going on with cannabis and the government telling you, okay, well now we're going to allow you to have some if you buy it off of us. And okay, you fought hard enough, we're going to let you grow some, but you can only grow 4. Well, don't just grow 4. Say screw you to the government like we would for anything else. Don't comply, don't compromise, overgrow the government on this one, and stand up in the face of oppression and tyranny in all cases, everywhere. Can you imagine if the government decided tomorrow that they didn't like people having tomatoes? For whatever reason they could come up with, have a bunch of studies, have a bunch of scientists tell you why, or there's damage being done to the streets from the tomato juice, or the acids in this, or blah 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 blah. That they would tell you why you can't have tomatoes. Well, we all know that that's ridiculous. And as free people, no public servant gets to tell us we can't have tomatoes. And I think we all know what would happen the day after they announced that we could no longer have tomatoes. We would all be en masse out in public holding tomatoes, proudly waiting to throw them at any of those ignorant, stupid public servants that thinks it's okay to tell us we can't have tomatoes. Well, don't do any different with anything else that they do either. These are ridiculous laws and things that they put in place there. They're never about really protecting people. They're almost always about either getting reelected or lining the pockets of the people that helped them get elected in the first place. And this is a really corrupt system that's evolving here, and we need to stop it from evolving the way that it is. And I think that the one big lever for that should be the cannabis file. Of course, they're trying really, really hard to not have to face the implications of what the truth is about cannabis, that they were lying from the start or falling for lies from the start, and there was never any justification for using the criminal law against people that would produce or sell or possess or consume this natural occurring plant that happens to have this symbiotic relationship with us that goes back thousands of years and through multiple hundreds of cultures where cannabis has been a big part of the pharmacopoeia and the nutritional and spiritual values of many of these cultures throughout, since the dawn of time. In fact, we have an endocannabinoid system that speaks to how we've had a relationship with the cannabinoids that this plant produces for millennia, as do all of the vertebrates on the planet. So if you don't understand what I just said there and you're not familiar with the endocannabinoid system, then check that out, look that up. You'll find out why cannabis has so many medical value or so much medical value for so many different things, because the endocannabinoid system is the system within not just our bodies but all of the vertebrates that has the role of maintaining homeostasis and balance throughout the other systems of the body. So when there's trauma somewhere, where there's inflammation, where there's pain, where there's all these other things, that interior cannabinoid system provides the chemicals to go into your bloodstream. It creates these things out of the foods that we eat, the essential fatty acids in our diets. It creates these cannabinoids, although inside our body they're called like anandamide and adrenaline and these other chemicals that our body creates and puts into our bloodstream that reaches down to every little cell in our body and has these effects that are required. And that's the role of the endocannabinoid system. And it's really a part of us. And this plant has had this amazing relationship with us for so long. And here, because of its value and its utility and how it's good for so many other commercial uses and other things, it became a threat to the bottom line profits of some other organizations that felt that they could capitalize on what cannabis was being used for if they could simply get it out of the marketplace. It's a superior paper. It's a more natural way of making plastics. It's all these wonderful things that it can be used for in the place of things that we're using that are much more harmful to the environment and to us, especially with the case of pharmaceuticals and what have you. So we really need to work hard to get our rights back and get our freedom back and get our freedom recognized and established and protected by these people who take money out of our paychecks to serve our interests. Well, that's one of the biggest interests that we have that needs to be served, is to protect our freedom, to make sure that we're free, to make sure that we have the room to operate without oppression, without pressure, to make good decisions for each of us, as we're all different people, different units, different ideas and groups of thoughts and desires, and we all need to be able to pursue those, whatever it takes to do that, as long as we're not hurting other people. And instead, we've got a government that decides that we should only desire these things because they're brought and paid for by their corporate buddies, and we shouldn't have or want these things because, well, they're just not good for you, and don't even ask us why they're not good for you. Just believe us and trust us. Just don't do that stuff. Buy these things instead. I mean, it's gotten to the point of ridiculous here, and we really need to stop all of that. Just a thing that came across the desk yesterday was there's a fellow 34-year-old man in Malta that's now been sentenced to 9 months in jail, which completely disrupts a person's life, by the way. I mean, if you get sentenced to 9 months in jail, you just lost your job. You probably lost whatever place you were renting. If you have a family that you're trying to support, well, they're in real trouble while you're going to go to jail, and they're going to scramble to figure out if they can even stay in the place that they're living or how they're going to put food on the table and all those different things. Not to mention what can happen to a person in a 9-month stay in a Maltese prison, or in any prison for that matter. But, your life is impacted so immensely. It's not that you come out a much better, more obedient human being, willing to not break the law and just live a good life. You come out scarred by all the things that happen in there, tainted by all the attitudes that are in there, and the stigmatization that happens to you when you get out of there, and the inability to get work when you get out of there. It really highly, highly impacts a person to be put into a cage, even for a month, let alone for 9 months. But here in Malta, these ignorant people think that it's okay, that they can just take a human being and throw him into a cage for 9 months because, apparently you're allowed to have, well, not allowed to have, it's tolerated in Malta. You can have up to 3.5 grams of weed, and it's only a $100 fine. But, when you get more than that, and maybe if you're a little bit inebriated in public, as this gentleman was, no accusation of him ever threatening anybody or damaging anything, just that, that was part of the equation there, was he was a little bit inebriated, and he had 7 grams of weed, double the allowable amount, and so he's got to go and ruin his life and go and spend 9 months in a cage and see if he can recover from that. For what? To whose benefit? Who's it saving from anything? How is this of any benefit to anybody except people that don't want people to have cannabis because of how valuable it is, and they don't want people to understand that that's something that you should be able to have and use instead of having to purchase and use all of these other substitute and replacement patentable items that they have for sale for us. We should live in a much more natural world. We can produce many of our own fruits and vegetables, and we can certainly produce all of our own cannabis. And only being allowed 4 plants, well, we can still do it within that if we're smart, except that's just ridiculous. So just for the point, grow more. Everybody grow more. Grow. Go get some seeds, share seeds, give seeds away. Let's do this. Let's not let these oppressive public servants, which are nothing more than puppets for the corporate elite that want to exploit us and use us and profit off of us. Let's not let that happen. Let's fight this at the very core. Every chance you get, be part of this solution, and don't just go along to get along with what's going on here in society, because it's far from right. And I mentioned before, Greta Thunberg talks about how the house is on fire and we just don't know it, and we should do something about it. And seriously, when they're putting people into cages and ruining their lives because they have, a small handful of cannabis flowers that they thought might help them, that's just absolutely ridiculous. On the side there was, with that story, a group that went there to discuss. It was a cannabis conference held in Malta, and the people that went there were not allowed to travel with cannabis into that area, so they had to find it when they got there. But even that was, pretty much against the law and very difficult to do. But small amounts at a time. Some locals helped them get some cannabis, and the suffering that went on there with these people. These were people that had been brought there for this conference to talk about how necessary cannabis is as a medicine, because these people needed it as medicine. And some of the things that happened to them physically, the suffering as a result of not having the cannabis that they needed and not being allowed to have it there, was very profound. And I'm told it, seemed to have a profound effect on the minister that they got an audience with to discuss these things. But yet, despite despite the talk about, maybe some, changes down the road and they're going to make things a little less severe, it's just talk. And it's just talk all over the place until it happens. And until it happens, they're continuing to ruin people's lives. And, it's not just Malta by any stretch. That was just the one that twigged my attention the other day. Canada is just as bad, if not worse. Here we've got a gentleman, Alex Robb in Victoria, was managing some medical dispensaries there, and he's now been given a $1.5 million fine with no judge or jury figuring all that stuff out. Just there you go, here's your fine. We have really devolved as a result of this attempted so-called bullshit legalization that they're trying to foist upon us, is devolving and eroding our rights faster than anything else has in a long time. We've now got armed thugs, warrantless searches going on, breaking into people's homes again, and coming up with, crippling fines. I mean, can you imagine if the government actually sent you some official notice of you being on the hook for $1.5 million, and that was that for that? Can you imagine what that would do to you and your family and your friends? Is our government looking for riots? Are they looking for people to actually rebel violently against what they're doing here? The only person people that were being affected by Mr. Robb's behaviors were people that were in need of accessing cannabis for their medical needs in a world where that's not been permitted by our governments ever. And they're just trying to fill the void that is naturally there that the courts have stood behind. This is the 4th anniversary of the Allard decision. For those of you who don't know, Neil Allard was one of 4 different complainants that put forward a constitutional challenge about the government going to take away the rights of people to grow for themselves for medical purposes. 4 years ago, the government came up with a new program of allowing people to have cannabis for medical purposes, because the courts had deemed that was a person's right to be able to do, and reasonable access was a right. But then the government decided that reasonable access meant that, you could just get it online, from our producers, and they didn't care about the poor people that don't have the ability to go online. And in fact, during the court case where that was brought forward, that was won, by the way, the Judge Phelan in the case declared at the end of the case, where people were allowed to continue growing for themselves and have designated growers grow, as had been the case before. They declared there that storefront access was at the heart of access for medical patients. And yet, here you have this person that's helping people get access through storefronts in an area where there's a lot of seniors and a lot of people that are sick and suffering. And he's being now handed a $1.5 million fine. This was back in January that he got that fine. He was given 1 month to decide whether or not he wanted to fight it or not. Fighting it, unfortunately, doesn't mean he gets to go to court with a jury of his peers or even an unbiased judge. It meant that he would have to go and face the very CSU piece of shit that made the fine up in the first place. And that 30-day period is now gone, and now he's just been told he has to pay $1.5 million. So there's another ruined life. A person who is just trying to help people, who has harmed no one, has no victim to be seen or brought into any court anywhere. The only victims of medical cannabis dispensaries seems to be these non-medical government stores, because they can't compete with low barrier access and good quality cannabis at decent prices. And so because of that, they think it's okay to use our tax dollars to go after people and cripple them, ruin them, and scare the shit out of everybody else to make sure that nobody else would dare ever stand up to these immoral and unjust laws. Well, Saved by the Bell, it's 4:19. Roll them if you got them. We'll be lighting them in a minute. So, meanwhile, we've got piece of shit Peter MacKay wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party again. He says that he doesn't think legalization is a good idea anyway. Now, mind you, in the comments, he says decriminalization would have been a better idea. And that would be fine if decriminalization meant realistic, just get the criminal element out of the whole anything to do with cannabis. And there shouldn't be any fines for anybody. No penalties for pot, period, is what should be happening. But that is not what he's talking about. And he's still spouting all kinds of reefer madness bullshit about protecting the developing brain, which of course we protect the developing brain, but do they protect it from alcohol and from harsh pharmaceuticals and antidepressants and things they even prescribe to kids? They're not protecting the developing brain by telling them all kinds of lies about a natural herb that could really save their lives or help them in profound ways, as it did me and so many other people. So Peter MacKay, screw you, and I hope you never get elected into anything, or anybody else who has these kind of dinosaur, archaic ideas, evil ideas about the role of government and thinking that they can dictate to people what we can and cannot put into our bodies and have for ourselves. It is outrageous, it is bloody ridiculous, and it needs to stop, and they need to be penalized for doing it, and it really needs to be seen as a heinous crime when public servants step over the boundaries of not just protecting people and helping people, but harming people and exploiting people. This is where we need to be going after people and making them accountable for that. So my clock says 4:20, time to calm down a little bit. As always on the show, we have 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca. Check that out if you're lonely or if you want a cannabis hookup or just somebody to enjoy some sacred herbs with. And how you doing, Glenn?
Good. How are you, Neil?
Yeah, pretty good. You're a little fired up here now.
Yeah, let's get time to calm down, as you said.
Well, I don't know, I got to calm down a little bit because,
You were talking about the endocannabinoid system, so I've got something really cool to tell you about that.
Cool.
So my landlord, I don't know how long he's been drinking, but I would guess a good 30 years. He was recently diagnosed with throat cancer. So I got some RSO, Rick Simpson oil, from Darren from BC Bud Guys, and he bought the whole 90-day program. 5 weeks into the program, he told his sister to bring his beer back.
Wow.
He doesn't want his beer anymore.
Take it back to the store?
That's how the endocannabinoid system has taken a man who was an alcoholic, who has cancer, and now his body doesn't want the beer. His sister messaged me and said, "Oh my God, Glenn, he wants me to take his beer." Right? She said, "Never in the years have I known my brother that he would want me to take back his beer." Wow. And I said, that's the endocannabinoid system making him healthy, right? That his body doesn't want it anymore, right? So, yeah.
My uncle is in his 80s, and he was an alcoholic for the first, maybe a couple decades of his life, some teens on.
Yeah.
And then he found cannabis, and he stopped drinking, and, it was such a benefit in his life for sure.
Yeah, because this man and
both of his brothers continued on just drinking alcohol. They both died earlier, like quite a while ago now.
Yeah. This man would drink every day, 18 oat Milwaukees, smoke his cigarettes, and stay in his room. And now he's getting healthy. He's not drinking anymore, and kind of makes you feel good, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to almost cry for the guy because it's so healthy for him to not be drinking and stuff. So
in many cases, people that are drinking like that are doing it to try to deal with issues that they have. You know, abuse from childhood or traumas that have happened, or who knows what, right?
And
but they're self-medicating for a large part. There's an addictive social aspect of alcohol use as well, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people that are using it because they're in pain and they're struggling.
Yeah.
A little switch here.
Do a little switch.
And for that, cannabis is a much better substance to use because just what you said there.
Yeah.
If it's a physical pain or something going on within the body, it can help with that because that's how the endocannabinoid system works.
It does.
But also if it's emotional pain, if it's something going on, with that, cannabis is a way better thing to be using
maybe just
to help straighten that out than alcohol is. Alcohol doesn't usually help people get to the root of the problem, solve it, and move forward solved. It usually just dulls it down, keeps it going, but keeps it a little bit, suppressed.
It could be a little thing like he's always been mean to me because he's been drinking and he almost hit me one time, right?
I see.
But maybe now he's seen some compassion because even from the guy he's threatened and stuff, I still helped him get his medicine instead of them pulling his teeth and giving radiation down his throat. Right? And maybe that may help him change to realize that, the emotional part, that there's actually people out there that still care no matter how he's been.
This is the love drug.
Yeah, it's the love drug.
Peace, man.
Yep. 7 years, that man has never raised the rent on me, but, I'm happy to help him out no matter who he is.
There's two ways to live your life. You can be a fear-based, alcohol-based person, or you can be a love-based, cannabis-based person. I'm not saying all alcohol people are fear-based, but alcohol sort of is that substance that keeps the fear going, that doesn't solve the issues. And whereas cannabis, it makes you think about things, it solves issues. And it's love-based, I think. It has been for me. And we're all love-based human beings or creatures on this planet.
Whenever shit happens, we all get together and help out each other,
We got here by love.
Yep.
That's what got us all here.
Yep. And then I received a little bit of love on the highway today. When I was traveling down
From
number
the
one.
strangest of places.
Yeah. So this police officer is like flashing his lights and pulls me over. I've got Erica, Miss Menabos in the car, and Jackson's with me. And I said, okay, I got my license and registration. And I said, what did I do? He goes, oh, you broke the solid line from the HOV lane. I said, oh, wow. I said, I've been driving since I was 25. We didn't have HOVs. Can you really explain the rules of this, right? So he did, and he looked at my license, and he went back to his car. I said, I've got a clean record.
Because you thought that where the HOV line has like dotted line and not solid line, that you could use that sort of as a passing way to get around slow drivers.
Only if you have one or two people in the car can you use that lane at any time. Even if there's a traffic accident, you cannot use that lane. You have to go to the right, not to the left. So I didn't even know that. I thought that when it's a dotted line, you could go in that lane.
You want to know my thoughts on the HOV line? They should not ticket people that are in there without more than one person in their car.
Okay.
They should be ticketing the people in those other two congested lines that have two people or more in their cars.
Yes.
Those people should be in that HOV lane. Yeah. Get the hell out of the way, all those other people. They're congested enough already. The people that are actually getting in the HOV lane that don't deserve it, they're not hurting nobody because those lanes are just moving forward. It's all good, right?
Yeah. So
if too much of it happened, of course, then they'd have to crack down. But let's at least get the people out of those other lanes that have two people in their car.
I want to say thank you to Constable Harry. He says, no problem. He says, you've got a great license. He says, I'll just give you a warning this time. And it's probably because I asked some really good questions about the lane. I didn't know.
Were you wearing that shirt?
Yes, I was.
Nice.
I was. He didn't even say anything. We hadn't smoked a joint.
Somebody stuck a weed enthusiast sticker on the back of my car.
Oh, well, there you go. That's
under some circumstances, I might do that myself. But, I don't know that I appreciate it, done without my permission on there.
Just like I don't have a CannaMatch
mostly because,
sticker.
We're still in a dangerous world here when it comes to cannabis.
Yes.
And I run the Cannabis Substitution Project. And so there are times when I have donations with me in the car, and I don't want to lose those.
No.
So I really don't want some, rogue,
you've
dinosaur of a cop.
On your bumper.
Yeah, pulling me over because, it says weed enthusiast, and he's going to find out how enthusiastic I am.
Same with me. With CannaMatch like this, I don't want to have this on my sticker on my bumper because the cop will say, well, there's fucking weed. Maybe he's got weed in his car. Yeah. Let's just pull him over and give him a hassle, right? I might have Isabel in the car. She's going to see the police being like that. So I don't put a sticker on there. I just, if they don't know
I can't get the damn thing off. I mean, I can probably because there's probably coconut oil or some sort of
other sticker over top of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I could put another sticker over top of it.
I know.
I'll say alcohol enthusiast.
Canuck sticker. Get Canucks, a Canuck sticker,
That'll keep me from getting pulled over unless I'm in Edmonton. Then I'm in trouble.
Or in Toronto.
Man, that was a crazy scene in Toronto, wasn't it?
I love that guy, man. Ayers is his name.
Yeah.
The first time the emergency goalie ever gets called into a game and wins the game. He let the first two goals in, then he got comfortable, and he did freaking fantastic the third
8 out of 10 saves.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 saves.
8 out of 10. That's why you like him so much.
I like that, Well, also because I'm not perfect, so 8 out of 10 is always good.
8 out of 10 is not a bad number.
Allows some room for the
80-20, that's a thing, man. There's like a lot of things that are 80% this and then 20%
and Chinese
it takes
culture,
80% of the time to do 20% of the job, etc., etc., etc. So 8 out of 10, that's you're hitting all right if you're doing 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and 8's a good luck number.
And you probably do that on CannaMatch too. You probably hit 8 out of 10 because weed smokers mostly get along, right?
Yeah,
so
most of the time.
I have no idea what the odds are.
Most of the time we get along. Depends on the views and stuff like that.
But so this guy who gets to practice with the Leafs once in a while. All teams in the NHL have to have a guy on standby just in case one of the two teams loses both of their goalies.
Which happened.
But it was the away team or the visiting team that lost their goalie. So this guy with Maple Leaf, everything else except the jersey, got in there and won a game for Carolina, who the Leafs are fighting for a playoff spot. If they miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 points, it's that guy's fault. He's going to wear that.
Some people were saying it was pretty bad that the Leafs couldn't score on a guy who's got no experience in the net as an NHL professional player. He only
like I say, if they miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 points, he's got to move to Carolina. He'll be welcome there, but he should probably think about moving to Carolina. And what's lost in all of that is that our amazing team of young kids and a couple of great veterans has really pulled together, looking like they're going to make the playoffs when nobody really thought they would this year. And they beat Boston 9-3.
Second time, right?
Well, Boston, I think, no. I don't think
Did
so.
we beat them?
I think we might have beat them early in the year. I think that might be true. But I don't want to say that without knowing.
Yeah.
But they certainly beat us 4-0 in Boston a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Giving us nightmares, reminding us about that 4-0 loss in Game 7 of the final in 2011 there, in the Stanley Cup final. But, the Canucks weren't happy about that, just like the fans weren't happy about that. They came out like gangbusters and beat them 9-3.
9-3,
8 different
really
goal
good.
scorers.
Yeah.
The only guy that got 2 was the new guy, Toffoli. So then, they wanted to give him an extra one just to make him feel at home.
Hey, coming onto a team and scoring 2 goals in your first game makes you feel comfortable.
It does. I think that he's really excited.
Yeah, I can be here.
Because we got some really good offensive players, right from Quinn Hughes on the defense up to Elias Peterson.
Well, we'll have to see. Markstrom's out now. We'll see what the doctor says tomorrow.
Demko gets his shot.
Yep. Yeah. If it's a teared ACL or whatever, it'll be a month or something they're saying. But if it's just
3 to 4
sprain
weeks
or something, it could be just a couple of weeks.
And so if it's only a couple of weeks, that's all right.
Yes.
Demko's been good.
Yeah.
So, I think that can continue. And whatever it is, it is. The Canucks can actually, they're positioned about 6 points away from missing the playoffs, which gives them enough of a cushion that they could have a little bit of a down. So, but they're not in first place now. It was almost.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it depends how you look at it. They got a better winning percentage than Edmonton, but they're 4 points behind the Golden Knights with 3 games in hand.
Okay.
But 3 games in hand is not 6 points. 3 games in hand is just over 3 points because basically you average just over a point a game.
Okay.
That typically that's where they are.
I thought you meant points by goals.
At 72, 72 points in the standing after 61 games. That means they're averaging 1 point to 2 points per game that they're getting.
Yeah.
So they're right there, and so is Edmonton, mind you, right there with a game in hand on the Golden Knights as well.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all 3 of those are. Wow. But it's still 20 games out.
Yes.
But these next 20 games are going to be fun.
We got till April, right? I think it's April sometime.
The playoffs are here right now for the Pacific Division, the whole Western Division.
They're all fighting for it.
They're all fighting for it. There's still the Jets and there's still the Preds. And the Preds actually are better winning percentage than the Coyotes at this point. So,
wow.
Because they got a few games in hand as well.
It
should be fun.
We'll see what it's like next week. Tune in again. Same cannabis channel. Same cannabis culture.
All right. We'll have some more fun a week from now. In the meantime, if you're lonely, if you want someone to smoke some weed with, CannaMatch.ca.
Come and check us out.
Thanks, Glenn.
3,500 people. Thanks.
And growing.
We'll see you next week. And growing.
See you next week. And with the mood properly set for the rest of the show, we're now going to get a little more serious. This brings us to the Martin Medical Moment. And this is a segment of the show where we talk about the fight for access to medicinal cannabis through storefronts, but in general for medical patients across Canada. This is a severe travesty that's been happening for a long time where the sick and suffering people in Canada have been repeatedly denied reasonable access by governments that are there to supposedly serve our needs and especially look after the people that are suffering and sick and poor. So these continuing attacks on medical patients throughout all these last decades, since 1923 when cannabis was first made illegal in Canada, leading up to the fight for access to medical cannabis through the courts, where people were granted the right through the Parker decision to have cannabis and then to grow cannabis. And then the changing regimes at the federal level trying to respond or trying to not respond to the court's decisions on reasonable access led to a fight 4 years ago, or actually it was more than that because it ended 4 years ago in the Allard decision that I alluded to earlier, where patients fought the federal government in court, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay lawyers to challenge the government, who had then decided that patients would no longer be able to grow for themselves or have designated growers, but everything would have to come through government licensed producers and through mail order. They didn't win, of course, even though they spent millions of our Canadian dollars to fight these sick and suffering Canadians to try to prevent them from being able to just grow plants for themselves because it makes them feel better and be able to deal with their serious illnesses and their not so serious illnesses. The government fighting people like that, fighting Canadians, trying to keep them from having those rights. It's just a heinous example of these absolute corrupt criminal politicians that on behalf of corporate interests and financial interests have been using our tax dollars and paying teams of lawyers to fight against dispensaries and patients to try to keep them from growing for themselves, to try to keep them from having reasonably priced storefronts for themselves. And all of it just in the name of profits over patients. It's absolutely disgusting. So 4 years ago, the Allard decision came down that patients had the right to continue growing for themselves and have designated growers. And in that decision, they said that dispensaries were at the heart of access. They were crucial to people accessing cannabis to medical patients, having a building that they could walk into. So many people don't have the abilities for a number of different reasons to access things online. Either they don't have bank accounts or addresses, or they're illiterate, or on and on it goes. So these storefronts and neighborhood storefronts are crucial to people having access to this amazing medicinal herb that helps in so many ways as it mimics our endocannabinoid system. And one of the people that had one of these dispensaries that in defiance of the criminal code and the law opened and was serving people, and there was hundreds of them across Canada. 3 years ago is when this particular one that Jerry Martin was running in a rural area of Saskatchewan was shut down. And even though, it's a long story, we've talked to Jerry about it before, but a dispensary owner that's being threatened to close by the authorities has a serious dilemma on their hands and really is not in a position to comply with that order, because any human being with, on the one hand, a bunch of sick and suffering people that you have the only ability, or you're the only one with the ability to help them, and they're asking for your help. And on the other hand, you've got a bunch of evil, corrupt, ignorant bureaucrats, public servants even, denying you the opportunity to do that. A dispensary owner really has no choice but to continue helping people, and that's what Jerry did. And so now for over 3 years, Jerry's been facing criminal prosecution through the courts. This has been held over his head, although he's lost much of his property, cars, bank accounts, and time. And the pain and suffering that he's had to endure, with being denied the ability to help people, which is in itself a cruel thing to do to someone, but also with the threat of punishment on the other end, which is even much, much more crueler. This has been a hell of a journey for Jerry, and we're following him on that journey, and I bring him into the studio every week to talk to us about that, although there's not much happening because they stall these things as long as they can while the prosecutors continue to chalk up hours that they bill for out of our tax dollars, because they're thinking about how they can convict Jerry even though there's no victim and there was no mens rea and there was no actus rea, and they got to think about that, and they got to really dig hard and try to put a case together using our tax dollars at exorbitant amounts of money per hour that they bill doing all of that, and trying to build their case against a man whose only intentions were ever to help people in the face of immoral laws. And so, this is more of the travesty and disgusting parts of our world that we're dealing with and trying to expose on this show, and as other people are as well. So I'm taking up too much time because Jerry's here, and I want to talk to him about what's going on. Jerry Martin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Neil?
Pretty good. Agitated as usual, I hate that we have to do all of this, We should be talking about other pursuits, about how you're helping people with psychedelics and other things like that. Just briefly, anything new, with the trial? Are we still in limbo waiting?
Still in limbo waiting.
All right.
Yeah.
So what else is new for you? How's your psychedelic journey going?
It's doing good, man.
It's doing good?
Yeah,
That's good to hear.
It's doing good, yeah.
So any roadblocks you're hitting on that?
Not so far. Today I should get a call from the lawyer for the final okay there on doing the study and things like that. So
cool.
Yeah. I'm expecting that call.
And the study, what the parameters of that, or some of the dynamics of what that's all about?
So first we're just calling up the Center of Forensic Science today to make sure absolutely that 1P-LSD isn't on there so that we can do the study with that one. And 1P-LSD is just a prodrug or an analog of LSD, which happens to be legal here. It's never not in the criminal code anyways. So
Right. Because LSD and other forms is illegal.
It is. Yeah, so we're going to
Any idea what the reason for that is?
Yeah, well, I believe in the 60s and 70s, a lot of it was because of what happened with the hippies and nobody wanted to go into war.
A whole bunch of people died doing LSD,
Well,
did they?
there was a few. There was a few things that happened. People maybe jumping off a bridge or out a window or something. But that was from lack of education. LSD was new at that time,
Right.
and people didn't have the proper education. You don't hear about those cases so much today as you used to, because people are educated and they know how to use the drug now.
Right. And there's a bunch of other things found in nature that'll do nasty things to you as well. If you get into them as well, there's thorn apple. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Thorn apple is a fairly common plant found, many different places, including here, and it is highly hallucinogenic. And people that, go ahead, Google it.
Yeah, well, I'm putting it on my notepad later. What's it called again?
Thorn apple. It's got a couple other names as well. You'll tell me what those are in a minute when you punch it up there.
I'm not alive next week. It's your fault.
I'm not telling you to do it. In fact, there's very few good stories about it.
Yeah.
Lots of people have tried it. It doesn't take very much of it. Most of the stories, it lasts for a day and a half to 3 days or more. There's very little memory of what happened during that time. There's usually bruises. People are waking up in hospital.
Wow.
It's a very serious hallucinogenic that's found quite commonly in nature and known about by those people who know about such things.
Well, how do they know it's hallucinogenic if they don't remember anything?
I don't know how they classify these things, but if you Google it, you'll probably find out that that's what they'll call it or something like that. Yeah. But lots of plants will have crazy reactions for people. Some people are allergic to some plants and they have crazy allergic reactions to some plants. But for some reason, our public servants got it in their heads that they could make things illegal like that without really very much justification at all.
Yeah, I believe in the 60s and the 70s, in the CIA, they were doing all kinds of, trying to use it for warfare as a truth serum and things like that. So it just got a really bad rap. So that's why even today, a lot of the...
I don't think it got a bad rap because the CIA was trying to use it.
Well, that was part of the bad rap.
I think the bad rap was orchestrated by governments and media and corporations to put down the anti-war people and call them hippies and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, tune in, and drop out, as Larry would say, right?
Well, war is a serious thing, and... just as our laws and governments and all these things are very serious things. And when you have a psychedelic experience or even a mild euphoric or mild psychedelic experience, which you can achieve through cannabis high-dose edibles, sometimes through concentrates, sometimes through really powerful weed, I think those are experiences that help put life into perspective for people. And it gets you thinking about things. It gets you thinking about why the government takes a bunch of your paycheck there just to boss you around.
Yeah, they don't want you thinking outside the box there.
No, they don't. They want to keep you in that box, and things that would help you escape the box become dangerous.
That was part of why the government did that as well. They didn't want people, thinking for themselves.
Exactly.
And they still don't.
It's a dangerous thing. Yeah. Because, like I say, taxes, they're pretty substantial. It's not just what they take right off your paycheck. It's what you're paying on the goods that you're buying, and every time you're going through this gate or whatever, and all these other fees and fine. I mean, it's really substantial, the amount of money that they're taking off of our labor, and we're supposed to be free, autonomous citizens in a free country with public servants, and they're taking all of this money. They're not really being very respectful to us in the way that they spend that money in many cases. Using it on war. Using it on enforcing laws against people accessing natural medicines. There's lots of things that and just the absolute waste of government that we're all aware of. The recent stuff at the Parliament or the legislature here in Victoria, where the Speaker of the House got really agitated about just how much how many fringe benefits that were being really taken advantage of by some of these politicians. Liquor cabinets full of the best alcohol Alcohol's a big thing with politicians.
I hear that. It's drink to drink every meeting you have.
Every
It's
meeting you
part
have.
Of the, it's part of the deal. Yeah.
And not just here, but in Ottawa
So
as
they're
well.
all shit-faced, making their shit up. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
We can't have those people smoking marijuana. That's dangerous to my pocketbook because I'm invested in alcohol. You know, the only danger alcohol or
there's not more fights down there like there is in other countries. You know.
Yeah,
They're
in the
all beating
parliament,
shit
you
out
mean.
of each other in parliament. You know.
they're pretty civilized about how
Yeah.
they get up in the morning, they go to their meetings, they end up a little bit shit-faced by the end of the day, and then
Yeah.
they just, I don't know what they do.
They're too tired.
Go put their dominatrix gear on and do their thing. I don't know what they do.
Monkeys.
Go get beat up by dominatrixes or whatever their trip is. But, they're not normal people because normal people don't have those jobs. Unfortunately, we've structured
Oh, they're
our
going to talk about
society.
the other thing. What's wrong with that, man?
I wasn't going that way too far. Heidi Chartrand in Halifax, by the way, is still awaiting March 2nd for her next court appearance on things there. I guess there's no new developments to really report.
No, Sarah's waiting.
Let me just check and see if my friend gave me any type of permission to talk about his case. I'll find that out right away. Nope, I didn't find that out. So a friend of mine has got a case. He's now brought his appeal forward. It was on carry limit. He's got somewhere around 100 grams a day for his severe medical needs as his prescription, and yet being limited to like 150 gram carry limit like everybody else. And the ludicrousy of that, here you are, public servants, how much can you have on you of this particular medicinal herb?
I know.
Like just do some psychedelics and think about that. That's what I'm saying. That's right. Do some psychedelics and think about these things. Not just taxes, but you've got some of this herb and it's too much, and the government's now going to come after you for that. Like, what? Like, how can this possibly be? But the insanity of our world marches on, and it's not all just insanity at all, because it's really calculated. And it's all contrived by these people. This is a conspiracy of ignorance to keep us, from using things that they don't make money on, from thinking about things they don't want us to think about, from all of that stuff. And it's,
I found a legal loophole.
a legal loophole.
For some psychedelics, anyways.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so how can people find out about that?
Yeah,
we took a little trip, by the way, after talking about psychedelics.
Yeah, microdelics.ca. They can take a look. There's information about how to microdose for ACO DMT and how to microdose 1P LSD and access to the 1P LSD right now. But I'm hoping within the next few weeks here we'll have the 4-ACO DMT kit out.
So access and a study coming.
And a study coming,
Cool.
So that study's my favorite part of things. It should be it's on the therapeutic uses of an LSD analog. So
well, we need to keep track of everything we're doing like that because statistics will absolutely save us.
That's it. The more proof we have that these things work, then the better chance that
and further to that, the more proof we have that there's really nobody being harmed in the process of finding out if they work.
Yeah, they just like the one in England or the UK, they just did with Alzheimer's and LSD. They proved again that it's safe at small doses, anyways, in older individuals. So
cool. Yeah. Very good, great work, Jerry. Thanks for taking the time to come and talk to us, and we'll update again next week and see where we're at.
Man.
Very good.
All right, thanks, Neil.
Thank you. Moving right along. Of course, when it comes to access to medical cannabis, moving right along really slowly. It's surprising how quickly government can act on some things and how slowly they act on other things. These public servants of ours, maybe we should have a little closer look at them. Maybe we should make sure that we try not to give them too much opportunity to abuse their positions of power, because as it turns out, human beings will do that. And as it turns out, the human beings that run for these positions in many cases are willing to lie about things, and they don't always work for who they say they're working for, and we can't trust them. And that's been going on for a very, very long time. And there's many places and fronts that we've tried to win our rights through and with. The struggle goes back hundreds of years. It's in the last couple hundred years, maybe 300 years, that There's been more and more movement towards recognizing the rights of individuals. Of course, the kings and the queens, and now they're more called the corporate elite, have also been moving forward in their sophistication and understanding how to oppress large groups of people and exploit them and maintain controls over them. And so for today, we're going to talk quite a bit about that, because my guest on the show will be Kyle McCormick, and he's on the board of the BC Libertarian Party, and he's been working with the Libertarians for a long, long time, he himself being a Libertarian, I would imagine. But we'll let him tell us about what his views are and what his party's views are, and what helped him get to where he is and where he thinks we're going to go with the world as we see it, with freedom and public servants and all of that genre. So, Kyle, how are you, sir? Good to see you on the show.
I'm doing really good, Neil. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, welcome. So, where are you from?
Originally, I'm actually a BC boy, born and raised. I was born in Vernon.
Right.
I grew up all my life in Salmon Arm, almost all of it. Did a brief spell in Kelowna, a brief spell in Cranbrook, and somehow landed up here. So
I see. Did you have a relationship with cannabis in your life early on, or how did it work?
No, actually, no. I did not touch cannabis until I was probably 21 years old, something like that. Yeah, so
Right
it wasn't actually, I wasn't one of those people who's getting stoned when I was 14 and then breaking the law. It wasn't a rebellious thing for me.
Did you have post-secondary education?
I am a proud high school dropout. I got out of there nice and early when I realized what was going on. No,
Spared yourself all that indoctrination.
and I'm not trying to. I hope it doesn't come off as arrogant, but it really was that we were sort of doing the same thing over and over, and it felt so slow to me that it felt like they were trying to.
Well, you haven't lived a life of being homeless on the street due to your lack of education or anything like that. In fact, what I understand about your path so far is you can be pretty proud of yourself, and especially, I guess, since you consider yourself a high school dropout.
Well, it's funny, yeah.
How did you come to the views that you have with respect to libertarianism?
It seems so passé to say that I've always kind of just been that way. I guess that's not entirely true, though, because the first time I ever voted, I did vote for the BC Green Party, and I'm not entirely sure if the BC Green Party is super individualistic, but I definitely always had a feeling that I was on the side of the disenfranchised.
What about your parents?
My parents? Not very political, actually. No,
Right.
It really kind of just all came out of my head.
I see. So you don't owe them for your take on these things. You were just sort of an astute student while you were a student
I'll
these
say
sort of
this:
things?
my parents weren't big into. I wasn't raised Catholic, so to speak. I was kind of
Right.
allowed to think and grow up the way that I wanted to and read what I wanted to read. And my
Right.
mom always brought me like science books and then great fiction and stuff like that. So I just sort of had a more, I guess, well-rounded kind of upbringing where I didn't have to worry about,
Right. You weren't trapped in the box of trying to unwind all of the crap that most of us have to deal with throughout our upbringing.
No, although it is
you could
funny
actually think fairly freely about taxes and what's right and wrong
Yeah.
and public servants and things.
I'll say this though, because it is funny that you mentioned being homeless. I actually have been homeless before,
Right.
so I've been
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
not at all. Well, no, of course
There,
not.
but for the
And,
grace of God, go any of us. A month away from homelessness, most of us. Right.
and I'm extremely blessed that it was only 2 days for me.
Right.
But definitely a wake up call when you wake up in a ditch.
Right.
That'll change your perspective a little bit.
It will. Yeah, for sure. So you formed fairly libertarian views.
Yes.
At what point did you start identifying yourself, as a libertarian, or?
Well, so I guess this started for me back in, I want to say 2015, something like that, although it had nothing to do with the federal politics at that time or anything like that. It was more about what I saw going on right in my home, which was that there was such a lack of opportunity for people like me and my friends who were not, we don't come from wealth. We don't come from this privileged sort of background. And yet we were the ones who were struggling the most, despite the fact that our government claimed to be helping us all the time. And it was over and over with this sort of, I have a vivid memory as a teenager of remembering watching politicians patting themselves on the back. And
Giving
being,
themselves raises.
and being grossly offended by all of that, yeah, and coming to understand that when they said that things were publicly funded, well, that meant we funded it, and that we had less of a say in it than we otherwise would have, is what
Right.
that came to mean to me, and so it actually sort of sprang out of a sense of powerlessness, I think. I was looking for sort of a good source of hope. And for me, that, it's always been
So
individuals.
were you looking for a place to vote?
I was looking for a place to vote because I've just always been, I don't believe in the non-voting, that mentality, this mentality that, the whole thing's corrupt. And I know that's very popular in our cannabis movement.
Well,
and
some people believe that you're taking part in a corrupt system and justifying it because of that.
I hear that all the time.
I know John
do.
West, bless his heart, believes that if we all just put none of the above on the ballot, that then they would have to choose from ordinary people amongst us to fill these positions, and then there would be checks and balances that would hopefully keep people honest and, working for the right cause. I don't know that we have the ability to do that or not because of, how people buy votes and
I don't think it's realistic. I think people, votes get bought, but also people want somewhere to put their hopes.
I will say that John is closer to realizing his dream than he was in the past. It's moved more towards there being more of a group that would be willing to actually write that on their ballots, none of the above, as opposed to not voting at all.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. It's an opportunity to change things. I can't. It's not a black and white issue for me either. I hate the system that we have. It's so corrupt, and the governments are so oppressive. Really, they don't respect our individual rights. They're not accountable. They don't do things transparently, and they should be way limited on what they do.
Yeah.
But of all the other systems of governance that so far are out there, it's probably still one of the better ones that we have to work with.
Yeah.
We get to have protests out in the streets and in front of government offices and say all sorts of things about how they're criminals and stuff. And,
right, and here they don't shoot at you for
yeah,
that.
and here you get to stand there and do that and
It's
then
no
fold
small
up your
thing.
tables and go away. And that
It's
is
no small thing.
And we've
that's
pushed that to 420, which
Yeah.
we have once a year now in Vancouver, the biggest and best 420 in the world, where probably 150 to 200,000 people are going to come through there while we preach all day long about the corruption of government and the rest of that. So, we've really got a system that allows us to voice these concerns. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a system that allows us to really change those things very easily, because that would require us to elect into those positions of government people who would then limit their power, make themselves more accountable and more transparent, and give us a bunch of rights.
Well,
and you know what I mean?
This brings it back around to your first, kind of question about how I got into this, is I was looking for a party that would sort of offer something like that. And people say,
Right.
oh, well, then you're a conservative. But I went over to the conservatives, and here are a bunch of people who fundamentally hate individual freedom.
Right.
They're just as collectivist as the Liberals, as the NDP, as the Greens. These people believe in different group identities.
Right.
So when I finally found the BC Libertarian Party, it was very small, right? But I read their mission statement, and it was all about securing the rights of the individual, and we're getting elected to shut down that system and shrink government and bring it all
Low
back.
taxes,
Lower
free
taxes.
market.
And it should be, and this is a bold statement, but I'm going to say it should be the proper political orientation of anyone in the cannabis community. Because what they did with cannabis users for 70 years, what they did and what they've done now post legalization.
You mean the green and the blue?
Yes,
Yeah.
and all of it. This
The orange
corrupt framework.
too, in many ways, and provincially and da-da-da.
Yeah, it stuns me that those same people will then be entrusted with the education of our children, the operation of our hospitals, the taking care of our elderly and our disabled and our sick. I want
agree.
all of those things. I just believe that government is the worst institution to accomplish them.
I think I can speak for a lot of people in the cannabis community when I say that we have tried to vote with whoever was going to be able to change things, and so many times you're offered the blue and the red.
Yep.
And if you go over there with the orange or the green, well, they're not going to get into the, so you're really kind of, oh man, it's just been such a dilemma. We hate so much about the blues and about the reds, and yet, they've got the game jigged, because they got so many money backers, these big groups that want to continue things the status quo.
Yes.
So that the other parties, life is a funny thing. Things are fluid. During the run-up to an election, things can happen. It's not outside the realm of possibilities. It's just not within the realm of probabilities yet.
Yeah.
But, I think the world is looking for something different. I think most people realize, Donald Trump, I don't even want to mention his name, But, he was talking about draining the swamp and cleaning the house there and stopping all the corruption. Well, unfortunately, it's not been that, and I don't want to even go there.
Yeah.
Damn it. Damn it,
Let's keep it north of the 49. Let's keep it in keep it in
so
Canada.
much to be upset about.
But we play
in so many places.
we play that same game
We
on
do.
the provincial level
Absolutely
too,
we
right?
do.
Here
in
we have the
Canada,
BC
same
NDP,
thing.
BC Liberals, and we just go back and forth. BC Liberals, BC NDP,
And they prey
BC
on
Liberals.
people's fears, right? I'm still going to go back down south again with how now Bernie Sanders looks like he's got a chance. So his own party is just attacking him like crazy.
It's such a funny thing to watch,
holy shit.
And there are lots of things that me and Bernie would never be able to sit down and agree on. I'll say that much. But you gotta kind of almost root for him as a sort of underdog who he's in a system and the system hates him, even though he's playing by the rules of the system. He's easily the most popular Democratic candidate by far, right? Which says something about where America's at. But at the same time, he's not going to get the nomination, I don't think. Somehow they're going to game it again and take it from him again. And it's bald now that people are, it's not like they're lying about it or trying to hide it. They can't even count votes in a caucus anymore.
They're just so blatant about everything they do. They're untouchable in their own minds.
Yeah, and people are trapped in this two-party system, which is, by the way, not about money and oligarchy. That's part of it. But it's mostly a mentality that we have. It's our fault. We play this game where we go, you're going to split the vote. Split the vote. And that becomes our anthem. That becomes our slogan. And it's a mindless slogan.
And theirs too. They play that against
Of course
us
they
as
do.
well,
Because they stand to benefit from a really strong... It's like Coke and Pepsi, right? Coke and Pepsi want each other to be strong and everyone else to be locked out. That's what they want. Microsoft and Apple. It's the same idea.
There's the trillionaires whose names we don't know.
Yeah.
Who run everything else and get these people to just, that are willing to sort of do their thing, and we get to choose between which of the puppets of the masters that we want to have to deal with.
But it's like you were saying, we actually have a unique system here that is better than most places in the world. Like there are other places where oligarchies are actually openly flaunting that they are oligarchies. Think of Saudi Arabia, right? They don't even apologize to their citizens.
True.
They go, yeah, we're in charge, tough.
I mean, they still do give lip service here.
Of course,
to the
lip service,
fundamentals of a free country and public servants and that sort of thing. You hear those sorts of speeches and things. And down in the States, too, we find these truths to be self-evident. That we are all endowed by the Creator with unalienable rights to the pursuit of love,
but they're clearly
life, liberty, and happiness.
Yeah.
And you guys are about that, too. That the role of government primarily should be to protect life, liberty, and whatever our individual pursuits of happiness are, provided we're not harming other people.
Yes.
I mean, that's the basis of libertarianism, I think.
It absolutely is what I believe in.
I mean, I would say that there's a little bit more of a role, like in some other things you said, there's a little bit of this too, where governments also have some role in providing and facilitating for us, not just protecting us. But I think that when there's a demand for something and there's a supply for something, if it's not easily put together, the government should help facilitate that.
Sure.
Just help these people that want this or need this. Get it from the people that have it to offer. That's what they should do.
Yeah, and I've got no problem. I mean, Canada has a rich history of public infrastructure projects that are monumental in their size and in the accomplishment of what it does to facilitate trade between the provinces. We think about the cross-country
there's
connections
a fair bit
that
of that
we have, the rails and the
on.
highways. Yeah, which are utterly invaluable to Canadians. And look,
we need governments to do that.
If you look at our platform, it's not like a laundry list of, we're not anarchists, it's not a laundry list of like, okay, first thing we're going to do, day one, get rid of permanent disability income and welfare, just cut them off.
Yeah, and you said you're not going to do that, by the way.
Day two, we're going to...
tuned in at just the wrong time, heard you say that.
Day two, we're shutting down all the hospitals. Like, it's not...
No, you think there's a role for government to play there in protecting people and also in providing these services that, we as people could use, provided for us.
Yeah, but the problem is that government has become a cudgel for people to hit each other with and punish each other and tell each other how to live.
Administration after administration after administration of lawmakers, of people who just make more rules and make more laws. I mean, there's a role for government to play in regulation. Regulations of some things where harm is occurring.
You can't have someone actually dumping like radioactive garbage into the rivers. Like, you can't have that.
There needs to be on how children's toys are manufactured is a good place for some regulations, because otherwise kids can choke on stuff or whatever, right? And there are places for regulations.
And we could dive down a rabbit hole, and I could explain how the libertarians could accomplish all those things privately. But the point is that those are not high priority things
Well,
for
I
us
think
either.
the over-regulation of things, and in fact, the
Yeah.
whole regulatory scheme gets perverted because it gets taken over by the very people that were trying to regulate, in ways that hamper their ability to make profits in some cases.
Yeah.
So they get their people on these regulatory boards, and then they make regulations that protect the industry more than they protect the consumer. I mean, that goes way back to regulations on meat production back in the 30s. And, that sort of a model has been corrupted over and over, and evolving corruption over and over. And I think I do. I don't know about you guys, and maybe you've thought about this or not, but I put a fair bit of thought into, what you do about that, because regulations are important in some things. There's more potential for harm and what have you. But to have those regulations corrupted is even more harmful and causes a lot more other problems. And it's been going on for a long time. It continues to poke its head up there. Where here in this industry, the regulators are responsible for this and this, and it's all because of profits over people, as always. But I think a second level of regulators. I think a regulatory board that oversees all of the other regulatory boards. And you
like an
wouldn't need another
internal
one above
affairs
that.
for the government.
Internal affairs, very public. Everything very public and transparent. Diverse people from diverse walks of life that could get together and from their unique points of view as expertise and having expertise in different fields would be able to scrutinize the regulations being proposed by the regulatory group.
Yeah.
And then they would have criteria to look for. They would be looking for corruption. They would be looking for exactly that which we're talking about the problems are.
Yeah.
And that could really solve a lot of things.
It's not a bad idea.
I think it's a good idea.
I like the idea. I certainly have envisioned that if we were ever to take government at any point, what we would want to do is put together something like a task force to go through each and every department.
A ministry of reasonableness.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
Yes, a ministry of reasonableness, because there's a lot of, excuses being made for government policy that protects the wrong groups, and it's not reasonable. Like with cannabis prohibition, a $1.5 million fine for the manager of some medical dispensaries in Victoria.
Yeah.
Being imposed by an independent enforcement group set up by the province that gets to impose these fines without any jury trial or.
Yep.
Oh my!
Oh, and that's
God, you
the
must
way
be going crazy about that as libertarians.
That's the way Canada is slipping too. Is what we've decided is, well, okay, actually, the rule of law isn't good enough for us. So instead of having courts with juries of our peers and judges who are well educated, we're going to set up tribunals, and we're going to set up bureaucracies that are unelected and unaccountable and can just do whatever they want.
And we only have the rule of law because they decided that common law wasn't quite good enough.
Right.
And common law is these evolving laws that have been going on for a few hundred years of trying to bring some reasonableness into deciding whether a person is guilty or not, and then what the penalty should be, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the rule of law is like, well, we're going to make the rules. You're going to obey the rules, or we're going to charge you with breaking the rules. And there's no mens rea, actus rea. There's no innocent till proven guilty.
Yes.
I mean, with cannabis especially, there's no innocent till proven guilty. You didn't hurt nobody. You know, you've got this herb that in 1923 they made illegal in Canada because of a book that was written by a Canadian judge named Emily Murphy under a pseudonym, where she just kind of repeated or summarized stories coming out of William Randolph Hearst's newspapers from the United States that were demonizing cannabis and associating it with all sorts of serious crimes, because that's how lawyers were getting their clients off. And that's how William Randolph Hearst was trying to protect his empire of trees that he was now turning into paper to replace cannabis-made paper.
Can't have people figuring out that hemp is a way better.
All these stories about evilness of cannabis was all summarized by Emily Murphy in a chapter of her book, The Black Candle.
Yeah, which is a terrible, horrible book.
Oh my God.
It's early propaganda. I mean, if you want to see how propaganda was done back in the day.
Yeah, she was a fearmonger. She was making money as a supposed journalist.
Henry Aslinger and all these
judge,
people.
although she wouldn't even use her real name. But she was fearmongering to sell books.
Yeah.
And in the case of cannabis, she said, and didn't call it cannabis, this was marijuana. This was the title was Marijuana, the New Menace. And it said this crazy drug from Mexico coming up and making people violent and insane. giving them super strength, causing them to rape and do all these horrible things. Anyone using this drug for any length of time would be horribly addicted and die a miserable death.
Which is clearly what we see here at the cannabis culture.
It happens all the
it's
time.
amazing. It's good you've got those locks on the door because there are animals out here.
And glass. That's bulletproof,
that
by
better,
the way.
I was
you
really
can just see
gonna
how
ask.
violent those people are out there. They're crazy.
They're playing video games and drinking coffees and
and all
horrifying.
that flew, right? That flew for a while. Because it suited the interests of the power brokers, the people that were manipulating the population.
Yeah, certain
into what they
industrialists
purchased.
and
Exactly.
certain people who had an
They
interest.
played on that,
Yeah.
and certainly William Randolph Hearst, he played on that to try to protect his forest interests and his paper interests, and to sell newspapers and all the rest of that.
Not
as
to
well.
mention also the deep-seated racism. That
Absolutely.
this was then associated with black people and Mexicans and that this is why they were to be kept away. They bring marijuana and they tempt your
25 to 1. The colored people that are harmed by these laws in the United States is 25 to 1 them to the white people.
That's so blatantly
Here-
obvious. You look at the statistics
so blatantly
once
obvious.
and
It's
you
a
understand
racist
what's
law,
going on.
should have been stopped, decades ago, just for that reason alone.
Yeah.
And here in Canada, we're certainly not saints either. Our Indigenous populations have suffered so much more because of those laws being enforced on them and not the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Still today, in fact, the statistics about the opioid crisis, completely driven by prohibition, is killing 4 to 1 the Indigenous people to the white people.
And you won't find another political party, Neil, that will unabashedly send representatives to your show to tell you that we want to end the drug war immediately.
No, I'm
that
sure
we
we
would
won't.
instruct the police in British Columbia to no longer arrest people for simple possession of any drug. Right. It's not the right approach. It's a healthcare problem, not a criminal problem. The criminality springs out of the damage, the hopelessness, the homelessness that follows from the bad health. So it's a healthcare problem first and foremost, and we actually need to address it. It's not popular with libertarians because in all likelihood to tackle this issue, it is going to be an expensive and difficult public-private relationship. Now, there's a good argument for private involvement. I think what you and your organization does, your group,
the CSP?
Yes, absolutely. I think what you guys do is it's impossibly good. It's incredibly good work, and
we're now really evolving quickly. We had our first board meeting, which I'll talk about a little bit after our interview and the CSP update. But we had our first board meeting, and the personalities involved are spectacular. I don't know whatever word you could use. There's no proper adjective to describe this group of people and the power that they bring to this group. Yeah. And we feel that we're bulletproof, basically, with what we're doing and how we're going to do it. That there's no way they can really stop us. I'm not going to mention all the different sides to how we are protecting ourselves from their ability to stop us from what we're doing. Yeah. But they are many, and I'm really, really excited and thrilled that the Serious Hope Society, which is a society that we've just formed, which was meant to be the umbrella society for the Cannabis Substitution Project, but also with a much broader mandate to do all kinds of other different things with respect to serious hope. And hope is a very powerful thing. It's a very necessary thing. And I think that I'm very hopeful that this group is going to spread a lot of different hope and for really good reason that we can make a big difference in a lot of different things. And we're going to start with access to cannabis for not just the opioid crisis, but for medical patients as well.
Good.
Because that's an area that really needs to be addressed immediately. There's people suffering and dying every day. 3 people a day from the opioid crisis. Innumerable people suffering needlessly because of a lack of good quality cannabis and cannabis extracts and products for them.
Well, and it is shocking to me just how inadequate the response has been from both this administration in British Columbia and the former one and the one before that.
It demonstrates the money that's involved is what it does.
Yeah, well, and just a fundamental lack of an understanding about what the problem is.
I think the ignorance excuse is made up. I don't think they're ignorant. I think that that's what they say, and they want to try to do that. But I think the real driving force is money. That there's huge dollars involved in releasing cannabis from its demonized position. Yeah. We are creatures of the earth. We are walking plants because, we're walking sunshine because the sun provides most of the nutrients that builds our bodies into what we are. We are children of the sun.
Absolutely.
The sun pelts its energy and its nutrients onto this planet, and it's soaked up and manifested in the form of these plants. We eat those plants. We become the cells of those plants, become us. We either eat plants or we eat animals that ate plants, or if you've been living for the last 40 or 50 years, you're eating some other stuff that they call processed food, which really doesn't have anything to do with any of that, and it's really not helping you very much with anything. So we got that going on here too. But what actually makes us us is the cells of the plants or the animals that ate the plants and the sunshine that made
And
that happen.
the idea that you would violently prohibit
Yes.
the access to those plants.
plant.
To a plant.
love
That
Chris
your
Bennett.
response to a plant is violence. It says something about you, for sure.
To use the criminal law.
And I would just like to say also, again, as a politician, I will be running in the next election. And like Elon Musk, I don't care if you see me smoking weed.
Well,
I'm not ashamed of it.
Well, that would have been a
all.
big deal a couple of years ago, but now with pot being legal, everybody can smoke now.
I guess it's not that big of a deal, is it? Yeah.
Not that
Nobody
big of a deal
cares.
anymore.
I missed my moment.
Well, you probably had it going on back then too, because you were probably willing to smoke weed a couple of years ago before it was legal.
We've been attending the
Absolutely.
Vancouver 420 now officially for the past 3 years. We'll be there again. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, because we
let's do
just
that.
locked up our booth. We're going to be 2020.
You and many
this
other people,
year.
the booths
Yes,
are going faster
they're
than
going
they did last
very
year.
fast.
If you want a booth, get in on that quick. Because
We almost
they're going
missed the
fast.
one we wanted because they were just.
Well, yeah, there's still a few
Yeah.
side by sides and back to backs, but now they're getting down to singles.
So you'll find us at booth 170. You can find it, I think, what's the website? It's like Vancouver420.org.
Vancouver420.com.
.com.
/booths.
Yeah, and you go there and it's booth 170. You'll be able to find us because we have a bright yellow banner. It's like a yellow gold
Up in the air.
Yeah, it'll be right on the side of our tent and on our
Nice.
table. And like we invite absolutely everyone to come by and ask us anything they have on their mind. If they have a thought about us, like they think that we're up to something that's no good, or they just don't understand our position, because it does happen a lot with the cannabis community.
Do you get a lot of that?
We have a strange relationship.
You got a lot of people coming up to you and saying, "But I like rules, and I think that the
Well-
leaders should be in charge of putting us in jail if we use plants." Got any of that going on?
I think they think we're Bogart in this thing.
Ah,
My apologies.
got no weed over there? Oh man,
That's not right. We're in the place where they make the weed.
I didn't know I was
should be
responsible
easy.
for keeping my audience. I mean, I tell you when it's 420, I don't hand out joints. Only to Glenn. and then he gives me one back always too.
So we've been doing this for the past 3 years. Coming to 420 every year. We've had our people on the stage before. We're gonna do that again. It might actually be me this year. I'm not sure.
But I'm just saying. I want to go back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you get opposition to the idea of people like being free, like
Well,
libertarian ideals?
it's a strange thing. We
Who
do
you
get
argue
opposition.
with about libertarianism?
Well, what happens? So what the assumption is, and this happens a lot when we're trying to interact with the cannabis community, actually, which is why I'm really glad we're here. Is there is, I think, a little bit of a bent to the cannabis community that is, I want to say, to the left, left wing. It's very, we care a lot about the disenfranchised because a lot of us are disenfranchised, and we come together in
If
this.
that's what left is, then I would go with that.
Right, sure. But what happens is when we advocate for things not to be done by the government, what people hear is that we don't want those things to be done at all. And that's not what we're saying.
Right.
When I say that, I'm actually not a fan of the public monopoly on auto insurance. It doesn't mean that I think we should get rid of the mandate for insurance and have a bunch of uninsured drivers driving around.
You just think it should open up the marketplace.
Just open up the market and let British
monopoly.
Columbians create hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs, and let British Columbians sell each other auto insurance. And obviously,
And if
again,
the government auto insurance is a better deal, then
people will go there. But I
gonna
think
go.
we all kind of know how everyone feels about ICBC.
when you're forced to do something, there's usually a reason.
And that's kind
When
of
they're making it a couple $1,000s a pound, but then they restrict it so that only certain farmers can grow it. I mean, every farmer would grow weed, wouldn't they? We wouldn't have any vegetables in the store right now.
That's exactly it.
If weed stayed the price it was and anybody could grow it and sell it. There'd be no other vegetable. Who would do that? Why would you devote any of your land as a farmer to growing celery that you're going to get like basically 5 cents a pound if you're lucky for?
Right.
Why would you grow that? I mean, the demand for good cannabis, of course, the LPs, the government's going to say there's not a big demand for cannabis because their stores aren't doing so well. But they better be recognizing and continuing to keep statistics about the underground market because, there's a lot of cannabis being consumed.
Well, and this is actually one of the reasons why I was excited initially for cannabis to be brought into the light is I wanted to know what those numbers were. I wanted to actually see the size of our industry. Some of the estimates I've seen say we're a $6 billion a year black market industry.
$7 to $9 billion.
So my number's out of date.
British Columbia, they've been saying between 7 and 9. But it's hard to know because it's an illegal underground marketplace, right? And who's going to admit to being part of that? But so they figure $7 to $9 billion. What I found interesting was that there's all this talk now. There's a lot of people who are shaking in their boots because of the whole. There was a lot of money laundered, right?
Yeah.
A lot of illegal money that needed to be laundered. Well, the amount of illegal money that needed to be laundered is about, they say, $7 billion, which is about the same amount of money as what is involved in is what they say. And I'm not sure those are connected. In fact, I'm sure they're not as connected as that. It's not the $7 billion in illegal pot sales that's now the $7 billion in laundered money.
Yeah.
It's not. That money comes from other sources as well. And a fair bit of that $7 billion or $9 billion in cannabis industry underground is just going into the hands of local people in different communities across British Columbia.
Yeah.
So it's not all going like in this form of great big bags full of money into casinos and stuff.
No, exactly. But the point is that underground market only exists because we take the stick instead of the carrot approach. We're all about punishment and prohibition here.
Yeah, and that makes a whole lot of big money for some
Right,
people.
exactly. It actually creates extraordinary opportunities. And
It
we
does.
know this because that's why it always seems to happen that some lawmaker who's opposed to guns turns out to be running guns. This kind of stuff happens all the time.
All the time. In the province newspaper today, there's a story in there about this guy that was working for the CIA or DEA, and he moved up the ranks fast, and they really trusted him, and he was great, and they moved him down into, I think, either Mexico or Colombia, where he was put in charge of the whole department down there. But they kind of started looking at him a little closer because he was throwing these great big parties. He was driving super luxury cars and buying all these fancy homes. He had yacht parties with girls in bikinis that were prostitutes, and all this stuff was going on. Turned out he had been put in charge by the cartel of laundering money for them. So he had laundered, and again, $7 billion they figured that what he laundered for them. So
interesting.
It's a funny number that keeps
That's
getting
strange,
bandied about there. There's something about the sevens. I had 7 people, 7 board members at the first board meeting of the Serious Hope Society, and we had 7 other people there as well, supporters.
Well, now I'm trying to remember. Oh, no, okay. I think it was episode 8 that we did. No, it wasn't 7. We actually did a economic lecture on, we do it every month, on money laundering.
When you're talking episodes, this is a podcast?
No, sorry, not an episode necessarily. It's actually live. We do them in different pubs around like Burnaby and Vancouver
tell us
area.
about that.
Well, it's called Liberty and Economics, and it's usually held by our party leader, Don Wilson, and then the last one, the one on money laundering, was done by an economics professor named Paul Geddes, and he's our party treasurer, and he's a professor professor of economics. He teaches this stuff. And
Liberty and economics.
Liberty and economics.
2 things that are tied interestingly together, aren't
well,
they?
listen, people may not like it, but the fact is, if you're not free to spend the money that you go to work 40, 50 hours a week earning, if that's not your money at the end of the day, that is a freedom that has been taken away from you. And it saddens me that we're so embittered against people being successful. I think we should want more.
Even if you give that money or some money to the government, you're still getting benefit from that, theoretically.
Yeah,
you're buying the services that they are providing for you.
Yeah.
The problem is that they're not providing the services the way that you want them. They're providing services that you're not in favor of,
Yes.
and the waste in government is
extraordinary.
Oh, it is.
You lose about
Rampant.
7% of the money just in friction, just in the
Disappears.
money moving around between departments. So you got to hire a bunch of bureaucrats to move the money
They
around.
spend it very freely because it's not their money.
Well, it's very easy to spend money that's not yours.
It is.
That's why a lot of people who win the lottery go broke a year later.
Right.
It's
So, and that's just part of government. That spending money is part of government.
absolutely.
But we need to have a system that really has checks and balances on that. We need to be able to make it so it's very difficult for someone to take advantage of those positions in the first place, and then make it so it's a proud thing to do, to work for government.
Sure.
I want to go back to my fantasy days of when a politician really was a public servant and really did stand up for the people.
When we had
and blah, blah, blah.
statesmen.
when we had statesmen and,
Yeah.
and where that whole attitude was there and they could be proud of who they were, and you'd be walking down the street and you with your kid and you'd say, hey Johnny, look, there's Mr. Jones, so and so, and he's a good man, you know.
Yeah.
He works for us, and you know, we got all this because of him.
And we shouldn't demonize every single politician. I know for a fact a
True.
lot of the people who run in these elections are trying to be that. They're good
are.
people. You know, I get along
start out
famously
that way.
with the, well, yeah, exactly.
Most of them do start out that way.
when
Most of them.
you get your hands on power, things change apparently. And
Well,
like
and if you're
to-
allowed to get that power, it's because you're willing to make certain compromises that the people that are allowing you
Yeah.
to have that power.
And this is the
are
constant
okay with.
criticism we receive is like, oh, well, how can you even interact with government without being a hypocrite? You're a libertarian. You're supposed to hate the government. It's like, yeah, well, sometimes you have to stick your hands in the mud. Sometimes you have to get a little dirty and play a game you don't want to play. I don't like the political game. I don't like it. But guess what? If all the good people are at work and all these bad people are in the government, left unchecked, running amok, this is not going to just magically get better one day. It's not going to fix
I just love what you
itself.
said there, because you know, the Stanley Cup riots that we had here in Vancouver, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, from a personal point of view, that it could have been worse, because when that started to happen, I was out in Surrey at my dad's place out there, and we heard about what was going on, and my son announced that he was going to go downtown. And, you know, as a father, I said, oh, damn.
Yeah.
You don't want to go down there. I don't want you to go down there. That's a dangerous place to go.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
tell what's going on. I mean, that's dangerous. Don't go down there.
Right.
And he said to me what you just said. He said, if all the good people stay away and only the bad people go down there, then it's going to be worse than it was. And
Wow.
and so, you know, very proud of my son that night.
That's quite a bit of insight.
Yeah, he's a good man. And I had to go with him, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, I could not let him go and wonder what's going on with my son.
Yeah, just
You
sitting
know?
there anxious,
So the
yeah.
two of us, you know, we went down and we got on the SkyTrain. We were the last SkyTrain that was allowed into the downtown core when they shut that down, because people were coming in from other areas, some good, some bad.
Right.
But my son made a difference that night. We made a difference that night. You know, we didn't stop the whole riot. But in our little corner of that riot, and you know, as we moved through the city, we helped situations. We
The little
made
bit of
situations
chaos
better.
around you were able to
we were
mitigate.
able to- yes, we were.
That's a very
He
interesting
put
story.
out a truck that they
Yeah.
just put on fire, for example. I mean,
Right.
you know, they ran away. These guys ran away when they seen us coming down the lane. They had just thrown lit newspapers into the back of this
Yeah, 'cause-
truck,
yeah.
pickup truck, and in the cab of it though. And my son just ran down there and started hauling these on fire newspapers out of this guy's truck.
Right.
Bert Easterbrook. An amazing human being, Guppy's son. I love Guppy. He's such
Yeah.
a huge part of my life and so many other people in this community. May he rest in peace. But his son, Bert, he went down to make a difference. And he also, I don't know if he put out a guy's fire or what it was. He got punched by somebody, got all bloodied up by it. But he was going to protect this truck. That was his little piece of the world. It wasn't his truck.
Yeah.
But, you know, they had decided to attack this truck, and he had decided that that was what he could do, is he could stop them from attacking this
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah.
And so he did. He's a big guy. And so the picture in the newspaper the next day, Father's Day, by the way, on the front page of both the Sun and Province was Bert with his fist in the air, looking menacing.
Right on.
And he was just in the middle of cold cocking somebody, and
Yeah.
you know, to defend this truck.
Right.
And it said "Heroes and Villains" on the front page, and told the story.
You got to
And-
frame
and
that.
Bert, oh yeah,
You know?
definitely.
You
that
got to
one is
frame
framed.
that.
I got one myself,
That's
actually.
that's awesome.
Called
That's
Guppy
great.
right away. I said, "Hey, have you seen the front page of the paper?" He goes, "Yeah, I got one right here." I said, "Good day to be a dad, eh?"
Yeah, no kidding.
It's
What a
a-
Father's Day.
What a Father's Day
Have
for
your
him,
son
for sure.
plastered on the. Yeah,
You
that's
know,
great.
But Bert made a difference there. And as we went through
Yeah.
and tried to, you know, settle the hot spots, there was other people doing the same thing. There was
yeah.
people that were getting involved and trying to make it worse, and there was people that were trying to make it better.
Which shows you how it all
could've been
comes
worse.
down to individual action, which is a
does.
huge part of our philosophy, just to sort of bring it all around.
Yeah,
This-
let's
this-
go back to you know, the autonomy of a human being.
Yes, exactly. And how individuals, it is on those individuals. There were individuals out there making choices to make the world a worse place, and there were individuals out there making choices. People talk too much about groups of people and communities as if they act like a body. They don't.
And with
Individuals act.
You know, governments need to respect and protect the autonomy
Yes.
of each individual.
Every individual.
Group rights
Equally.
That's a whole other story altogether. The only other
Yeah.
group that needs any other, they don't need any other protection. If you had protection as a human autonomous individual from your public
then you
servants,
don't need to cater
don't
to
need
different
any other group rights
religious
unless
minorities or
you're a child.
races. Except children, and we can agree on that. Absolutely. Children are a special class that require protection.
That's
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
That's it. And then maybe the disabled. But then again.
Well, and like I said, you're not going to find on our
Let's go from
platform,
there.
hey, there it is on our
Like all those
platform.
other groups here,
Cut
right?
the disabled people off. It's not libertarian.
Well,
to
a
be,
society, how do you feel as a libertarian about this? A society can be judged on how well it looks after its least able.
Sure. I think that is valid. It's maybe not the only way to judge a society, but it is definitely a valid way.
I know another libertarian person who probably would have said to me, well, let the churches do that, or let the community groups do that.
But that's not actually a
But a
terrible
community group-
argument.
Well, the churches used to be the government, and that's why they probably used to have that role. And it is a role for churches. I'm not sure there is a role for churches.
Well, but you notice the government.
in the modern world, but sure
Yeah,
there is.
well,
Of course there is.
but
That's
the
I won't go
government
there
goes
either.
and
I'm not talking
regulates
religion
it.
here right now. Modern religion, but anyway, but there is a role to play. And when you say let the communities do it, well, that is government. That is what we're talking about. Government on a community level. People helping people.
Yep.
Groups of people who decide we want these services in our communities because
Yes.
we do have these issues.
But it
here,
should be done
you know.
locally. It should be done locally.
It should be done locally.
And
That's
that
what's done the
is a
best.
huge part of our platform is decentralization. Get rid of certain provincial responsibilities and break them down
So
into
what
the
would your
municipal
role
level.
for the provincial government be then?
Definitely a lot smaller. And not looking to capitalize. I mean,
Would it be to perhaps have some laws about some things that the municipalities could not go beyond for whatever reason?
Well, and there's
because
a good.
sometimes some municipalities, I think, really do abuse their particular constituents.
I'll tell you
with
about
different
one.
bylaws and
Yes.
things that they bring in.
I'll tell you about one.
In fact, I want to put this point in before I let you go, and that is, and not I mean go. I mean go. I want to get out in your response,
Yes.
and that is that we seem to live in a country where every municipality is its own little burg.
Yeah.
And they can pretty much do whatever the hell they
Whatever
want,
they
you
want,
know.
yeah.
And there's no real checks and balances that should be there, I think, from maybe a federal government to say, no. You can't make somebody, like you can't penalize somebody because they've got flowers in their backyard. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Federal government's going to kick in and say, we're here to make sure that your individual autonomous human beings that are part of your constituency
certain fundamental
are also
freedoms.
protected from you, local governments.
Yeah.
That might be the role for a federal government. Would you agree with that?
Maybe not the federal government. I think that's a good idea for a provincial government, but I think you want multiple laboratories to
So
experiment
what if one
in.
provincial government, no names mentioned, but Quebec, decides that you can't even access cannabis through the legal source until you're 21, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What about these provinces that say you can't grow cannabis for yourself? Even though the federal government says that you should be able to.
Absolutely.
I think that there needs to be a limit on what the powers of these provincial governments are, as well as the municipal governments, as well as the federal.
Yeah.
But the role for me of the federal government is to make sure that those limits are not exceeded by these other levels of government to the point where people's rights are being violated.
Right. Like there was a story, and I actually get
Trying
some.
to shift your party into
No,
policy, by the way.
No.
Right?
But people being told to take down their Canadian flag because it's not part of our strata complex. Like that bugs me. But I get pushback with that from other libertarians because they're going, well, stratas are libertarian. And it's like, yeah, but like if someone came and told me,
or are they tiny little dictatorships?
yeah, exactly. If the strata
kinda
council
depends
came
on the
by,
council,
and
doesn't it?
I would refuse. You know what I mean? I'd be like, no, that's a Canadian flag. You're not telling me to take that down. I don't care what the strata rules are. So one thing we would do, because we recognize that this housing crisis is primarily a failure of government policy, is we've been talking a lot internally about some kind of policy that has to do with abuse of zoning bylaws. There's
two sides to the housing crisis, by the way. There's the people that can't get housing because they can't afford to get in, and there's people that are paying millions and millions of dollars for properties that is inflating the price of everything.
Yeah. But if you
it's a
dramatically increase the supply, a lot of those problems go away anyways because there's just such an overwhelming, they can't buy everything, goes the theory. Now, we could talk about different regulations about.
But I'm waving my head a bit about that because there's a lot of people want to live in this particular area of the world, in the Northwest.
For sure.
Here, and those markets are being inflated by people just willing to pay more. That's a free market. I don't know what you could do.
No,
about
it's
that.
not though, because of where these people are getting their money. you know, and like when people are being backed by the government of, say, China, and being given untold millions of dollars to come over here and speculate in our markets, that's not.
So the government of China giving people money to buy up property, that's an interesting.
Well, and the Chinese government is one of the larger and more involved. It's a communist government. They have fingers in absolutely everything in their society. The idea there of individual freedom is dead and gone, and nobody cares about it in that market either. So this shouldn't surprise people that foreign governments are being bad actors. Right. The same thing is happening to Alberta's oil sands. Now, again, I know there are people in the cannabis community who are not big fans of the oil industry. That's not my point. My point is that when you have foreign-funded interests landlocking our country's oil resources so that they can't get them to market, and you find out that that's being funded through things like tides, that should make you angry as a Canadian. It's because even if you are a lefty who loves democracy, that's not democracy. That's corporatism in its most vile form.
Sure, absolutely. It's using leverage to expose or exploit situations for sure. So to wrap up my point there, what we would do is stop abuse by zoning. So, like, what we want is for municipalities maybe to not be able to single-family zone every single square inch of their city. Right. Right? Because why do they do that?
Well, it's NIMBYism, in my opinion, not in my backyard. Everyone wants affordable housing, but I don't want the filthy, poor people near me. Could you build it somewhere else, please?
Lobbying by the different
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. And it needs to stop. You don't have a right to control what kind of buildings get built near you. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd, and it needs to stop. And it is simply because people in this country are so tuned out of politics. Nobody gets involved. And so it's just some of the worst people that are running the show right now. And that is part of our argument is like, look, it's really easy to sit there and complain from your comfy armchair. We're asking people to get in the game. Right? If you don't like what you're seeing, if you don't like the fact that we give away about 40% of our income between federal and provincial taxes and municipal taxes, about 40 to 42% of our income, you don't like that, but all you can think to do is post memes on Facebook, you're not helping. Right. You're not helping.
So you guys are having town hall meetings and
absolutely. And we're all over the place. We just had a protest outside of ICBC's headquarters last month. That was awesome. We got lots of signatures for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. They have a nice to end ICBC's monopoly. We gave away 100 End ICBC stickers. In I think April, we're doing an agricultural land use town hall out in Abbotsford. We want to talk to farmers and get their policies, their ideas, as opposed to these people in Victoria on their island in their little white ivory towers who have never farmed a day in their life writing policy for farmers. We want to get our policy from the grassroots. So we're going to do a town hall. We're coming to 420, booth 170, 5 minutes on stage. We're going to be there.
We're probably a year out from an election. You never know. With
it could happen a lot sooner. These
unstable government that we have here, it could happen a lot sooner.
And by the way, that's what we're looking to actually achieve. I want to be realistic about this. Obviously, it would be awesome if we won a majority of seats, obviously. But what we actually would love to see is 3 or 4 libertarians holding the balance of power like the Greens have.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's an incredible, and that's actually achievable.
Are you running a candidate in every riding?
We ran 3 times as many candidates last year as the BC Conservatives. We ran 30, they ran 10. We are actively recruiting now for all 87. But I don't know if running a full slate is actually our top priority or if it's focusing...
You don't want to spread yourself too thin, perhaps?
That's exactly what it is. Now, we've spent the past 2 years working around the clock to build local organizations in Prince George, in the Kootenays, down here in Vancouver, in the interior, in Kamloops, and in Kelowna. We have these local organizations. They exist now. They're real organizations. They have presidents and treasurers. Do you have an office that's staffed, in many of these places? Not yet, because that's prohibitively expensive. Right. But during the election, I think we actually are going to end up...
So how do people get involved? How do they find you then?
Libertarian.bc.ca.
All right, and then there'll be different links and different ways of finding in their particular
and
area.
And I encourage you to explore the website, take a look at all our different positions.
You guys do barbecues and things like that?
Yes, we do, and there'll be more of that to announce.
Not this time of year so much, maybe? It's been
not this time of year, but we do it. We do all summer. We had a great one in Surrey last year where it was our best fundraiser ever,
right?
And it was actually not that well attended. I think maybe 25 people showed up, and it was our best fundraiser ever because everyone was just so thrilled with what we were doing, and it was a great barbecue, great event.
Nice.
I also want to mention in May 2nd, in Kamloops, we're going to be having our annual general meeting. So if you check out the party and you really are enthusiastic, I'm sure someone's got a spare passenger seat and would be willing to take you up. We are going to carpool up there from May 2nd and have our annual general meeting. It's really important. You know, it's where the rubber hits the road. You can either talk about it or you can take action. You come to the AGM, your voice is actually heard.
Right. Yeah. How big a membership do you have?
You know, I don't have the exact number in my head. What I do know, though, is that our volunteer base has been growing across the province. Like I say, we've built these great organizations, these little riding associations.
Are you closely affiliated with the other provincial libertarian parties?
Well, there aren't a lot. The Ontario Libertarian Party actually has one of our former board members now as its leader. My good buddy Keith Komar.
Here in BC.
Yeah, Keith Komar. Of course, you know him. He was on stage at 420 in I think 2017. Yeah, I think it was 2017.
We might get you on stage this year.
Well, it might have to happen. Yeah, Keith is in Ontario running
Booth
that
170.
party. Booth 170.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming in and letting us know about the party and yourself and all the rest of it. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wish you great success because I don't really align myself with any of the political parties, but I align myself a lot closer with the ideals of the Libertarian Party than any other party, that's for sure.
Well, and we've been in this for...
We don't have a lot that we disagree on.
We've been in this for a while. That's why our sticker has actually been on your front door here for the studio for the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's why we like to have it there. You can find it right there.
It says "Stop the Arrest Now." And I just want to say, as we're wrapping up here, I love what you're doing. You are a man who actually hits the streets and takes care of people, and you have
somebody's got to do it.
You have our support, though. You have our support. You are doing the right thing. You're addressing the opium
I know
crisis.
That the whole cannabis movement has had your and your party's support, for a long time.
Maybe we get a little donation from Mark Emery every now and then. Who knows? Well, I can't say. I can't
because
confirm.
That's what I was going to say. We support each other. We
have
support
to.
you guys as well.
We have to.
And there's no party that really states it better for what we're looking for. The fight for proper legalization or
decriminalization. Yes.
Just get the criminal law out of it. Get all penalties out of it. The fight for that is about freedom, and that's what it is at its very core.
And actually addressing the problem.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming in, and all the best. We look forward to seeing you at 420.
Thank you so much. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Definitely Hastings Street.
Hello. Welcome to year 4 of the Cannabis Substitution Project. I'm sorry it's raining on you. There's going to be a protest, for those who don't know, coming up here shortly, so there's going to be a whole bunch more people in the area trying to make a point, and we're just going to try to work with those people and coordinate so that we don't block the sidewalks, we don't interfere, and all that kind of good stuff. We got our volunteers inside working hard to make sure you get your packs as quick as we can, and we'll get you out of the rain. Once again, I'm sorry about that. And love y'all. We'll see you inside. Have a nice, safe day.
So here we got t-shirts.
What is the size? That's a medium. Hey, look at him. Dude. Look at him.
Got indica.
Indica.
Almost ready. And that looks like chicken. Is that chicken infused?
Look at that.
Oh, it looks so good. And then we got something for the children, so the children don't feel left out.
Thank you guys.
Have a great day.
Yeah, here.
Oh, she can have one of those.
She can have one of her own?
Yeah, she can
All
have
right,
her
then
own.
we represent.
I guess. Do you want the balls?
Hi, how are you today?
Oh, good.
What brings you to the cannabis substitution lineup?
Oh, I like it because some of the stuff we get, it helps my back. It's got a bad back.
Yes, you may.
Thank you so much. Those are so helpful.
Hi, Papa Smurf. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And what brings you to our cannabis substitution lineup today?
Because I'm an alcoholic and cannabis helps me with my DTs. It helps me to stay off the illicit drinking. So that's rubby and mouthwash and horrible things like that.
Oh.
So I'd rather do pot. Pot also gives me an appetite.
So you eat.
So I eat more. I get mine from a dispensary here. I could get it from the government, but I choose not to. I don't find their stuff very good. So the government
Dispensaries?
medical marijuana is not all that great.
And the government says that you can only have 10 milligrams at a time and they're dangerous. And we're proving here it's not dangerous. We're here twice a week. We give out about 600 care packs in that week of high-dose edibles to people. And we've had no hospitalizations, nobody's complained. The right dose is very fun and helps with the pain issues, helps with sleep issues, helps with appetite, all kinds of things.
It helps get off hard drugs too.
Well,
Very
that's
important.
the point. Yeah.
And what brings you to the cannabis substitution lineup?
I'm getting off fentanyl.
Oh, that must be really hard getting off fentanyl.
Yeah, it's tricky, but it's okay.
And how does the cannabis help you out?
It's good. It makes you relax. Kind of gives you that peaceful feeling.
That's kind of what the bags are.
Oh, okay. Do you have one of these?
Hi, how are you today?
I'm okay.
What brings you to our Cannabis Substitution Project?
I come to Vandu to get the edibles and the weed that they offer.
And how does that help you out?
Well, being that it's a free thing, it helps on cost of being in low income living situation, and also being able to have that resource and someone with chronic pain and all of that, it helps out a lot. Like I got like metals in my legs and all of that, and being able to have that medicine works wonders for me.
So do you find the cannabis better than the pharmaceutical pain relief?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much.
What brings you to Cannabis Substitution lineup?
The edibles.
The edibles? And what kind of edibles do you use?
I guess there's
The indica ones, okay. And how do they help you out?
they calm me down.
I don't need a joint. You don't need a joint.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. What brings you to the Cannabis Substitution lineup?
Well, I'm a big fan of the edibles that you guys have here. I use them to help me get sleep. I have real bad insomnia, so it helps me with my sleep so that I can get back to work and yeah, I really
And stay
appreciate it.
focused.
Exactly, absolutely.
So we really help you out. That's so great.
Yes.
Because
it's
you
a
can't
very
get
helpful-
our edibles in the store.
Oh yeah, no, I've looked for them everywhere, and these ones are really good. I'm just really grateful that you guys hand them out for free also. So it's double,
It's a win-win.
Double whammy, yes, it's a win-win. Absolutely, that's how I would put it.
Hi, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good.
And what brings you to Cannabis Substitution Project lineup?
Free weed.
Free weed?
People.
And how does the cannabis help you out?
Cannabis helps me with anxiety and pain. I've been smoking it for a lot of years, so to have a free weed line is
Okay. And what kind of pain are you suffering from?
I have gastrointestinal and pain in my bones.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So what brings you to our Cannabis Substitution lineup?
Well, actually, I used to work for Vandu a long, long time ago, about the year 2000, and when they started this a while ago, right? So I've been coming here for a few years now.
Oh, since the beginning, 3 years?
Yes, yes.
Wow. And how does the cannabis help you out?
Well, I'm a cancer survivor twice.
Oh.
No, ta-da.
Okay. Ta-da. Okay. Okay. And the cannabis has really helped you.
Yes, it does.
I love your attitude. You're
Thank
nice
you.
and happy, and I can feel you're a very strong woman.
Gotta be.
Hi, baby. Oh, look at you. So how do you feel after that pit bull over there wants to eat you? How does that make you? Oh, doesn't make you feel good? What a good puppy.
Right, at the CSP we also take care of people's dogs, thanks to Apothecary Labs, who provides us with CBD dog treats. We have dog treats for the dogs and other animals that come through. There was one lady has a couple of rabbits, and we gave her some of those, and just a couple others too. That's a wonderful thing. Pets are very important to people, especially when people are a little down in their luck or in those types of places in their life where pets are very important. And so very happy that we're able to help people with their pets, as well as the care packs that we give out, the CSP, the Cannabis Substitution Project, going into its 4th year now. We give out care packs of primarily high-dose cannabis edibles to people in an effort to help them get off of the street drugs and to not use those street drugs anymore and use cannabis high-dose edibles in the place. And we've been very successful in that for over 3 years now. Very happy that this past Sunday we were able to give away seeds again. Every year we give people seeds, and really thrilled that Sweet Leaf was able to provide some seeds for us, as well as some others that we have as well. Very happy with our donators. So we have a few anonymous donators. You know who you are. Thank you so much. All of the donations is what makes this project work. We had a great day on Sunday helping people. We had a huge lineup. We gave out, probably in the neighborhood of 300 care packs, 250 to 300 care packs to people. And very blessed to be able to do that. And the other thing that's happened now is that, as I've been reporting here, we've been moving towards setting ourselves up as a society, and we have now done that. And we are a registered nonprofit society. We had our first board meeting on Sunday right after we did the CSP giveaway. Our 7 board members were present, and we had 7 other people that are affiliated with our society that were there as well. And there was another 6 people on an advisory board that for various reasons were unable to be there. But the people that are involved in this new society of ours that is going to now take the Cannabis Substitution Project into its next phase of being in a storefront and in a partnership with some other people in a retail slash Cannabis Substitution Project type situation are just incredibly impressive for sure. I'm very excited about how we're going to be able to move forward, and we have a really good chance of helping to unite the cannabis community under the umbrella of the Serious Hope Society. And there's a real need for that to happen, as we've been quite split by the government's imposition on us of this so-called legalization and all the penalties and all of the shutdowns. I think of the S&M Sweet Shop in Gibson's that was recently raided by the CSU. Those oh man, I could come up with a whole bunch of superlatives for those police officers, but mostly for the people behind them that sent them there. But even as police officers, they should know better than to be enforcing these types of laws. They should be able to use their brains and understand that they're not protecting anybody from Doug and Michelle and the S&M Sweet Shop or any of these dispensaries. There's no one being harmed by these places, and what the actions of these immoral, outrageously corrupt police officers is really, really harming people, not just the staff and the owners of those stores, but more importantly, the people that they've been serving in their community that have very little access to the things that help them. So shame on the CSU, shame on the Horgan government, shame on Steve Farnsworth for all of the things that they're doing to restrict people's access to this amazing healing herb. They should be ashamed of themselves. So, and in any case, we had a great board meeting. We're going to move forward with a number of different things that we think we can do as a society, and I look forward to telling you about all of that in the time to come. In coming events, there's the protests going on, put on by the Victoria Buyers Club. The protests this week will be at Mike Farnsworth's office. That's at 910 Government Street from 1:30 to 4 p.m. In Victoria. Mr. Farnsworth is the real person behind the Cannabis Shutdown Unit, the CSU. And he's the one that we really need to voice great unhappiness towards. This is a great opportunity if you're in the Victoria area. If you can get there on Friday between 1:30 and 4, this is an opportunity to have your voice heard. And we need to be loud and clear with these public servants about our dissatisfaction with what they're doing in blocking and restricting access to medical cannabis dispensaries. It is absolutely disgusting. And I know there was some comments about not berating these police officers with things that might not allow them to sleep well at night and to not feel good about themselves. Well, I'll tell you, we don't get to talk very face to face to the people that sent those police officers there. They should know better. They should be ashamed of themselves. And if they're having trouble sleeping, good on them. And even if they get sick and die and their family members are harmed because they can't get access to cannabis, well, maybe that's karma. And I can't feel bad for them. So that's how I feel about it. They're the people that they send out there. It's really disrespectful to the people that are in law enforcement, that our public servants send them out there to shut people down from simply helping people to not be sick and to die. In the face of an opioid crisis where our children and our families are losing members to an opioid crisis driven completely by prohibition, and now when one of the answers is to have access to medical cannabis through medical cannabis dispensaries, and our governments are using our tax dollars to shut that down, well, I can't imagine how mad I would be if I was one of the owners of those dispensaries that had that happen to me. I can imagine I'd be yelling and screaming at whoever's face was there representing that decision to shut us down. And that's how I feel about that. So that's our coming event is a protest coming up this Friday at Mike Farnsworth office. Go and tell him what you think of this. Write him a letter if you can't get there. Phone his office if you can't write a letter. Somehow communicate to these people that we are not going to take this corrupt, blatant attempt to harm people to protect the profits of a bunch of greedy monopolists. It's about time that we turned this around and lived in a society where our public servants are not our masters, and evil masters at that. The other coming event, of course, leads me to my traditional shirt removal. So, close your eyes if you can't take it, but should be no skin. But it is getting close to 420.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, landlord.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I got landlord with me.
420 is like Christmas for me.
Yeah? Why is that?
It's so festive green.
Yeah, it's got the green going on.
Yeah, 420. I can't wait, man. It's awesome, man. It's the best.
Are you going to wear your suit? Your weed jacket, or you got that back?
I was talking to Jody. I was hoping to get a nice full green one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
nice.
It'll be a full green one.
And then you'll have it for the March coming up 2 weeks later.
And May the 2nd, the first Saturday, is the Global Marijuana March, yes.
Yeah. We expect you to be at the front of that again, as always.
As always, I enjoy coming to you guys' different talk shows and learning more about marijuana and trying to encourage people in the community. It's peace, hope, and love, man. That's what I think.
Peace, hope, and love. So you're going to help us take over the streets and have a protest and march to somewhere, set up and talk about our unhappiness with the government. And there's a lot of that going on right now. And I think the governments really need to listen to people. And that's about what I can say about that.
And the march will be May 2nd. Usually we go down Robson Street all the way down to Denman.
Now, is that Saturday, May 2nd?
That's Saturday. That's the first Saturday in May.
You got that figured out already, do you?
I know that off by heart. Right?
Okay.
So that's the first Saturday, May 2nd. Look in your calendar. I'd like to see a lot of people out there. Bring another friend and get someone just, make the streets full.
It would be good to have just even a small percentage of the 420 group come to the Global Marijuana March.
To have some people from 420 coming on the Global Marijuana March, sure, it's legalized, but we're still fighting amendments, right? A bunch of different...
Wow, this is not legalization like we thought. One of the themes for 420 this year is legalize this. Legalize this. We're the cannabis community is going to come out on April 20th, and we're going to set up booths and help each other get access to good cannabis products, and we're going to enjoy those cannabis products, and we're going to have music, and we're going to talk about governments and what we think of their so-called legalization. And all those booths, there'll be probably 700 booths, all the ones that are selling anything to do with cannabis are all still illegal and subject to harsh criminal penalties for doing what they're doing. And our theme is legalize this. None of them should be criminals.
We'll do our sun dance. I'll get the brotherhood and make sure we do our sun dance.
Sun would be great.
Yeah.
Sun would be great.
Free to flower. Flower power.
We've had a lot of luck. This will be our 26th 420.
my 7th or 8th, yeah.
For me, my first one was 1999. So this is 22 for me.
Wow, 21 years.
21, 22. I think it's 22 because of the way that works out. And I was there in 1999. So I think it's 22. Never missed, of course. They never would have happened without me. That's not true. But I did, play a role in helping put this event together for all these years, every year. Very happy about that. It's very interesting to see how it's grown. You want a puff?
That's good.
You want a puff?
It went out.
Where'd it go? There we are. Give me that thing. I got 2 more minutes left.
But yes.
Sort of.
And there's a volunteer meeting coming up.
Well, did I get confirmation on that? Let's see if I got any confirmation on that. It might be right here. No, it is not. So I'm not going to say when the next one is because I don't want to give anybody any misinformation. But there will be a volunteer meeting coming up real quick. Am I over? I'm back over here. That's what happened.
A lot of people have been asking me.
I moved because you were there and
yeah.
And now okay. We'll go back over to here.
I walk down the streets every day and people ask me when is the 420 volunteer meeting? When is 420? Is that?
Well, we had one volunteer meeting already. You know that, right?
I know that one.
Yeah.
There.
And we're going to have them about once a week.
Yeah.
And the booths are for sale. And they're going so fast that if you want a booth, you should get a booth. We're way ahead of the sales for last year. And we're going to have a really cool event this year. We've yet to announce the musical acts, but they are going to be amazing. We're going to do our best to top what we did last year, and that's tough. But every year, 420 is better than the year before. I don't see any change coming in that. So get your booths. There's also a great opportunity to advertise your brand. We've got the screen that rotates people's brands all day long there. So there's those opportunities.
Cool.
And we need all those revenues. We really need all those revenues. We had the city threatened our main sponsor from last year and for the years before,
I wish
and
the
they
city
can't help
would
us.
wake up and say, "Hey, it's the 21st century. Time to get out of the past, man."
They should embrace this event. This is a real first-class event.
It's a big, huge event that brings tons of people from all over.
We do the city proud. They can be proud of this event, and they should embrace it. I wish they would.
I know we cleaned up because I helped get the cleanup crew this last year.
One year, about 3 years ago, they decided to take a picture of garbage that had been piled up but then taken apart, and the seagulls got at it, and that wasn't our fault. We always do what we're supposed to do. We put it where they tell us to put it, and then they take it away. But they made a big kerfuffle about how we make a big mess there. We don't make a big mess there. No. We do, but we clean it up, and we stay till late in the night. The crew that stays there, Dana Larson.
I know, I was there last year.
They stay late at night and get that all cleaned up every year. We've always done that. Yeah. Since my very first 420, my son and I took it upon ourselves to help clean up garbage that day. I'd always taught my son, take away more garbage than you bring, and the world will be a better place, and that's what we did that day. And then we started giving out joints. I soon became one of the organizers, and we handed people joints for cleaning up. We've always made sure that we leave it cleaner than we find it. Sometimes when it rains, the field gets a little mucky now that we've had to move to Sunset Beach, but that's not our fault, and we do all kinds of things to try to minimize that as well. And I want to say here that while I'm on the rant, that people in the area tell me that they used to play that soccer on that field.
Yeah, rugby or soccer.
Every weekend, and that it used to get torn up like crazy, and there was never a peep about.
They don't complain about that.
No, but they like to complain about our group. So, going to be a great year at 420. Thanks, landlord.
Yeah.
We'll see you there. All right. As I move myself around, we're right at the end, and I want to say that Pot TV has other shows that come on here all week long. From Under the Influence with Greg Williams plays every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. We've got CC Cannabis Culture News Live with Jeremiah Vandermeer on Fridays, where he'll get you up to date on everything that's happening to do with 420 and other things like that. Saturday, High Noon with Boss Lissa. Monday, the 420 Lifestyle Show with Carly Marley and BC Bud Gal, the most fun you can have in a podcast about weed and prohibition. And I'll be back next Tuesday with more from the THC Show. Thanks to Anil, my producer, for helping us get this done properly every single week as we continue to practice doing a show until we get it right. that's the deal I made. I'd keep doing it till I get it right. I want to thank Glenn for coming on as he does for the 420 session every time, and Jerry Martin for the Martin Medical Moment. For Kyle McCormick from the BC Libertarian Party for coming and sharing the views of his party and what they think about protecting people's right to be autonomous human beings. I appreciate the Libertarian Party, and I think if we all just all of a sudden supported them, we could like vote them in, and then we'd have a whole different reset of our government. Could happen. The system that we have tries to discourage that thing from ever being a possibility, but you never know. You never know. Those other people are talking about how they're going to, maybe be a little less harsh on us, while the Libertarian Party's talking about how they're going to actually maybe try to give us the freedom that we deserve here. And freedom is what we really do deserve. We should spend a good portion of all of our time trying to make sure that it's free, not just for us, but for our neighbors and for the generations to come. Freedom is such an important thing to being a human being and to how this human race of ours is going to move into the future. And we really need to get a reset of how public servants deal with our free citizens, and how if we were respected and if they were limited, accountable, and transparent in what they do, then we would make much better choices in our lives, have a much more abundant world to live in, a much more economically sustainable world to live in, a much more cleaner world for the environment to live in. All those things all walk hand in hand with people being free and with their rights being respected and the rights of this planet. So seek freedom, and while you're doing it, have as much fun as you can.
Hello there, first-time viewers. Welcome to Pot TV. Welcome to Pot TV.
Let them go! 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 Let them go!
It is only now, once we've reached this point of critical mass, that I could really tell you the story, because that's the interactive nature of the internet.
Pot TV is an internet video-based site. We've had over 6 million shows watched. We get about 10,000 shows watched a day. Shows on growing marijuana, medical marijuana, politics of marijuana.
And at that time, most magazines or books revolving around marijuana were prohibited literature.
From cookbooks to grow books, books about the cannabis culture, mushroom books, even psychedelic books.
The mass injustice being done, where millions of people in this country are being scapegoated, having their rights and their property and their leisure time and their privacy and their freedom of movement all stripped away from them.
And they pulled me off the line, and they pushed me down and put me in handcuffs, and they locked me in the patio.
This is what it's all about. A little green plant. You, the taxpayers, are being asked to subsidize a war on a little green plant.
I know it's scary and difficult and frustrating, and politicians are a fraud. Try and change that and be a voice of truth.
For many, many years, decades.
In 2001, Canada legalized marijuana for medical purposes.
Pot TV News Flash breaking story, July 9th, 2003.
I became leader about 9 months ago.
You have how many locations, and how long have you been serving the people of the community for?
Well, I started in 2004.
Because as long as you're not hurting anyone else, as long as you're not causing any harm, then why should you be dealing with police or prisons or agents of the government?
A former DEA agent and author of Powder Burns, Cocaine Contras and the Drug War.
In the media often, and the media reports uncritically all too often.
I saw this video and I was like, whoa, man, seems like there's something to this.
Join me weekdays on Pot TV.
We're going to be doing a new show here on Pot TV.
On Pot TV, Inspiring Bauer combines poetry, music, art, video clips, and photographs with a variety of interesting guests who are involved in the medical cannabis movement.
It comes on air at 4:20.
Cannabis indica, or Indian hemp. It was tasted by the priests on sacrificial occasions.
I'm gonna stop and smoke a joint. Just figured I'd show you my surroundings here. Beautiful, beautiful little flowers everywhere.
hemp and its many applications, how hemp can be made into paper and fuel and clothing and that.
2 different samples.
Now these are the same cut, grown in the same room, with 2 different soil mixes.
As a line diagram, okay, and this is a cross-section of a bract.
Now on some of these plants too, there's something called pre-flowers that form. Sometimes 8 to 12 weeks into the veg cycle, you can look 3 or 4 sets of branches down from the top. Hey, wait a second, I'm not even smoking joints. I'm talking.
We need real cannabis dispensaries. Many patients who use cannabis as a medicine need access. You're taking the medicine away from sick and dying people.
Let's overgrow the government. Let's have more marijuana than they can ever stop.
But while you sit here enjoying this, remember those who are in prison this moment, locked away from their loved ones, locked away from their friends, and that could be you.
Just want to say thanks for watching Pot TV. You can't get higher on the net.